Chapter 40-37. Seeing the sword of burial of heaven fall from the sky, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a hint of panic, and he subconsciously wanted to pick it up. However, Dao Xingyun revealed a smug sneer. He immediately waved the silver dragon divine spear to block Ji Tianqing and took the opportunity to counterattack. Left with no other choice, Ji Tianqing was forced to defend himself and retreat step by step as he fled into the distance. Naturally, he couldn't pick up the sword of burial of heaven that had fallen from the sky. One of his swords had been shot down, and he had lost a suitable weapon. His battle prowess had naturally decreased. Dao Xingyun became more and more confident. He saw the dawn of defeating Ji Tianqing, and he increased the pace of his attacks. Thus, Ji Tianqing could only increase his speed and escape, and he was exhausted from defending against Dao Xingyun's fierce attacks. Even the 400+ foreign race god-kings became spirited when they saw this scene. They were full of confidence as they increased the speed of their pursuit. As for the sword of burial of heaven that had fallen from the sky and disappeared into thin air, no one paid any attention to it. Perhaps, there were a few foreign race god-kings who thought of picking up that divine sword and taking it for themselves. However, they didn't dare to leave the group and pick up the sword of burial of heaven in front of everyone. They could only suppress their greed and chase after Ji Tianqing with the heavenly strategy region master. No one knew that the sword of burial of heaven that had disappeared into thin air was hiding in an alternate space and observing for a moment. It only appeared again after the group of god-kings flew 100,000 miles away. It secretly followed behind the group of god-kings, looking for an opportunity to attack. Of course, everyone was immersed in the joy and anticipation of pursuing the enemy while they were victorious. No one cared that the group of god-kings was being left further and further behind, and that they were gradually losing touch with Dao Xingyun. As a matter of fact, even the group of over 400 foreign god-kings grew longer and longer before they knew it. It couldn't be helped. The strength of these god-kings was different, and their flying speed was also different. Some were more severely injured, some were less injured, and some weren't that injured. This also affected their flying speed. About 15 minutes later, the Divine King's army stretched to about 50,000 miles, and was divided into 5 groups. At the same time, they were left behind by Dao Xingyun by more than 200,000 miles. They could no longer see the figures of Ji Tianqing and Dao Xingyun. They could only see the sky in front of them constantly shattering and dazzling divine light shining. At this moment, something unexpected happened. At the very back of the group of god-kings, a streak of white light suddenly flashed through the originally shattered and empty sky. It was the sword of burial of heaven. It had sped up and caught up to the god-king's team. Swish! Swish! As the white light flickered, the world and the sword opened. Figures flew out and appeared in the sky. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu, Lan, Yank, one after another, god-king experts appeared, brimming with energy and killing intent. Ji Tianqing wasn't present. This battle was led by the sword of burial of heaven. It was the first to charge into the god-king's team, causing a bloody scene. Following that, Ji Ku wielded the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda in his left hand and brandished his divine spear in his right hand. He unleashed his nirvana flames and killed many foreign god-kings. Yun Yao, Bai Feng, Chao Qingyu, and company followed closely behind. They unleashed their most powerful attacks, dealing fatal blows to the foreign god-kings. Apart from killing enemies, the sword of burial of heaven was also responsible for supporting everyone. As for Ji Ku, apart from killing enemies, he also used his intrinsic divine artifact, the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda, to save everyone at critical moments. As the strongest person in the group, Bai Feng also unleashed her heavenly phoenix shadow. She transformed into a white heavenly phoenix that blotted out the sky and released the most violent divine flames. Since it was a surprise attack, everyone didn't hold back. They unleashed all their potential and strength. Their goal was to kill as many foreign race god-kings as possible in the shortest amount of time. Swish. 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 Bam. 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 The dozens of foreign god kings at the back of the group were the weakest mid-level god kings to begin with. Furthermore, they were all severely injured. They weren't on guard at all. Suddenly, an expert attacked from the back of the group. As a result, by the time they recovered from their shock, it was already too late for them to dodge. Following an earth-shattering explosion, waves of blood gushed out from the group of foreign god kings. Destructive divine light shockwaves burst forth. Saber lights and sword shadows flashed, and five-colored flames soared. In just one exchange, more than 20 foreign god kings were blasted into pieces. Broken limbs and blood rained down. After 2 breaths, the foreign god kings regained their senses. They shouted and roared angrily as they launched a counterattack. However, Yin Yao, Ji Ku, and company's momentum had already been built. They charged forward with unstoppable momentum. With the sword of burial of heaven as the vanguard, they formed a sharp blade and ruthlessly stabbed into the foreign god kings, tearing them apart. Bam! 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 Boom! Boom! Loud noises rose and fell one after another, lingering in the ears. The foreign god king's screams didn't stop either. As the waves of blood surged, many foreign god kings were smashed into pieces and turned into ashes. The outcome was already decided. After 100 breaths, this ferocious attack came to an end. 47 foreign god kings who were severely injured and weaker were all killed by the group. Not a single one survived. At this moment, the group of god kings 20,000 miles ahead had already realized that the situation behind them was not good. When they saw a group of god kings appear out of thin air behind them and kill more than 40 of their comrades like they were chopping vegetables, they were also shocked. However, after they calmed down and observed carefully, they realized that Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and company's cultivation realms were not high. Other than Bai Feng, who was a high-level god king, the rest were mid-level and low-level god kings. Such weak cultivation realms dispelled their worries and made them feel much more relaxed. As for the fact that more than 40 of their comrades were killed, they didn't think that Yun Yao and company were that powerful. It was just that their comrades were severely injured and were caught off guard when they were ambushed. Very soon, this group of god kings turned around and charged towards Yun Yao and company. There were a total of more than 100 foreign god kings. They were filled with excitement and joy as they charged over with murderous intent. Although they were about to fight a huge battle, they weren't flustered at all. In fact, they were very happy and excited. They were actually grateful for the appearance of Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and company. After all, they finally had something to do. They didn't have to participate in the battle between Dao Xingyun and Ji Tianqing. They just had to surround and kill a dozen or so weak god kings. It was simply too easy. Both sides had yet to fight, but many of the foreign god kings were already planning not to use too much strength later. They had to take it easy. This was to prevent them from killing Yun Yao and company in 3 to 5 moves. They wouldn't be able to stall for time and would have to surround and attack Ji Tianqing. Many of the foreign god kings had this thought. They had a tacit understanding. However, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and company reacted very quickly. Seeing nearly 100 foreign god kings charging over, Ji Ku made a prompt decision to activate the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda and put everyone into the distorted spacetime. Then, she brought the pagoda into the sword world. The burial of heaven sword that was ready to attack disappeared with a flash of light. It had hidden itself again. Chapter 40-38. The Sword of Burial of Heaven was not a supreme-grade king-level divine artifact. However, it was more than enough to deal with those middle-level and upper-level foreign race godly kings. Most importantly, it was even more special than supreme-grade divine artifacts. That was because it had a complete sword soul and had its own consciousness. It used the divine sword's power to hide in an alternate dimension, completely isolating the hundreds of foreign race godly kings from probing. This move was very beautiful, instantly causing those godly kings to miss their target. Ah! Damn it! Where did they go? They were still here just now. Why did they all disappear with a flash of light? Where did they hide? Why can't I detect them with my divine consciousness? Everyone, be careful of traps. Don't panic. Search carefully. The foreign race godly kings who were still excited and fighting bravely immediately quieted down. Everyone stood in the sky and looked around in confusion, searching for something in all directions. However, the sword of burial of heaven had already passed through the alternate dimension and left this place. It flew 50,000 miles at an extremely fast speed and caught up with another group of foreign race godly kings. This group had more than 70 people, and they were basically middle-level godly kings. Moreover, their injuries were relatively light. Although these godly kings were definitely more difficult to deal with. However, this group was focused on traveling and did not notice the abnormality behind them. They also did not know that more than 40 of their comrades had been killed. In other words, these godly kings were not on guard at all. Swish! When no one was paying attention, the sword of burial of heaven escaped from the alternate dimension and appeared on the right side of the group. With a flash of white light, the world within the sword opened. Ji Ku appeared high in the sky with the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda. The sword of burial of heaven exploded with the fastest speed and the sharpest sword energy as it charged into the group of godly kings. Ji Ku also opened the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda and released Yunyao, Chao Qingyu, and the others. Everyone used the same trick and used their trump cards to attack the foreign race godly kings in front of them. Bam! 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 Boom! Boom! The scene from before played out once again. Saber lights and sword shadows covered the shattered sky. Dazzling multicolored divine flames and glazed flames poured down like a flood. The shattered sky was instantly filled with dazzling divine light. Following a series of loud noises, destructive shock waves spread out in all directions. As soon as the two sides clashed, 2 alien god kings were insta-killed by the burial of heaven. Soon after, even more foreign race god kings were killed by Bai Feng, Yunyao, and the others. The group's sneak attack was indeed effective. Many foreign race god kings came back to their senses and immediately began to counterattack. The curtains of a great battle of daggers clashing against each other thus began. The Heaven Burier sword continued to charge forward. It was like a black streak of death as it shot through the battlefield, killing foreign god kings one after another. Every single god king that was struck by the black sword light had their heads smashed and their godheads destroyed. However, no matter how domineering and sharp it was, there would be a time when its power would weaken. After charging forward more than 10 times and killing 22 foreign race god kings, its aura weakened and its power decreased. At this moment, more than 20 foreign race god kings pounced over and surrounded it. Seeing that a divine sword that no one was controlling could move freely and unleash the battle prowess of a high-level god king, everyone was extremely shocked. However, they were also very curious and interested. Many of the foreign race god kings that surrounded it revealed greedy expressions. They looked at the sword of burial of heaven with burning gazes. Although they knew that the sword of burial of heaven was very dangerous, they could not restrain themselves. However, they were still unable to restrain themselves. They really wanted to obtain this mystical divine weapon. The sword of burial of heaven knew that it would be very difficult for it to break free even if it tried its best to break free. Thus, it played along and pretended that it was not strong enough. Soon, it was captured by 2 god kings. The 2 god kings used their capturing techniques and caught it at the same time. Although it struggled desperately, it could not escape from the 2 god kings' imprisonment. It could not help but let out a sword hum. Seeing this, the 2 god kings felt their blood boil. They did not hesitate to snatch the sword of burial of heaven for themselves. However, the two foreign race god kings were evenly matched when they attacked at the same time. As soon as they saw this, the surrounding alien god kings were all stunned. They had never thought that their own people would actually start a fight over a divine sword. However, after thinking about it carefully, they did not feel that there was any problem. Because if they were the ones who caught the sword of burial of heaven, they would also take it for themselves. Thinking of this, more than 20 foreign race god kings' eyes burned with passion. They had made up their minds. If the two star lords failed in their fight and the divine sword escaped, they would definitely snatch it. In any case, according to the heavenly strategy Star Field's usual practice, such spoils of war belonged to whoever managed to snatch them. Let go of this king. Star Lord Santua, it was clearly this king who caught it first. Nonsense. It was this king who made the first move and caught this divine weapon. You. Then it belongs to whoever snatches it. Strength speaks for itself. When the two star lords fought over the sword of burial of heaven, they did not forget to argue, but it was to no avail. The two continued to fight with all their strength. Finally, not far away, a god king who was on good terms with Star Lord Santua secretly helped him. Whoosh! Star Lord Santua's strength increased greatly, and he snatched the sword of burial of heaven on the spot. The other Star Lord's giant palm of divine light directly collapsed, and he was also knocked back a few hundred meters. He was so angry that his face turned black, and his body surged with killing intent. However, he could not kill his colleague in front of so many people for a divine sword. He could only grit his teeth and swallow this humiliation back into his stomach. After successfully snatching the sword of burial of heaven, Star Lord Santua excitedly raised the sword of burial of heaven and showed it to his colleagues. He excitedly shouted, "This divine weapon belongs to this king." However, just as he finished speaking, the sword of burial of heaven, which had dimmed and weakened, suddenly released a dazzling sword light. Whoosh! The sword of burial of heaven unleashed its full power and instantly pierced through Star Lord Santua's skull, shattering his mind and divine spark. Star Lord Santua was frozen on the spot. The vitality in his eyes disappeared, and he died on the spot. At this moment, the sword of burial of heaven turned into a streak of black light and escaped the encirclement while the god kings were still in shock. After 1 second, everyone realized what had happened and immediately exclaimed and roared. Star Lord Santua is dead. Be careful, everyone. That divine sword is very strange. It's not weakened yet. It was just pretending to be weak. Don't be fooled by it. Oh my God! How can a sword be so cunning and capable? What kind of weapon is that? How can it be so smart? Although it's not an ultra-quality divine artifact, it seems to be alive and intelligent. It's definitely more valuable than an ultra-quality divine artifact. Everyone, chase it. We can't let it escape. As everyone shouted, more than 20 god kings of other races chased after the sword of burial of heaven. Not far away, the dozens of god kings who were besieging Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others were fuming with anger, but there was nothing they could do. Chapter 40-39. We were all attacking these dozen or so godly kings and the two divine beasts. Yet, you bastards only care about snatching that divine sword. Damn bastards, I will definitely report this to the domain lord later and let her punish you severely. These thoughts flashed through the minds of the dozens of godly kings who were attacking Yun Yao and the others, and they became even angrier. However, they could not leave their posts, nor could they join in the commotion and chase after the sword of the burial of heaven. They could only grit their teeth and use all their skills to attack Yun Yao and the others. However, Ji Ku used the power of the 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda and formed a shield with 5 colored flames to protect everyone. The divine arts cast by the dozens of foreign race god kings landed on the barrier, but they were completely ineffective. Instead, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the other's counterattacks landed on the crowd and caused a large number of casualties. The two sides fought high up in the sky for 100 breaths of time. Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Bai Feng, and the others were all injured. Their hair and robes were dyed red with blood. However, the dozens of godly kings suffered even more casualties. More than 20 of them were killed and another 20 were injured. If the battle continued, the remaining 20 or so godly kings would be killed by Yun Yao and the others sooner or later. At this moment, the 100-man team from behind rushed over to support the surviving godly kings. Seeing that the situation was not good, Ji Ku decisively used the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda and pulled everyone into the distorted spacetime. The intense battle just now came to an abrupt end just like that. Ji Ku also hid in the pagoda and used his mind to control the pagoda. He turned into a black light and fled into the distance. A moment later, the sword of the burial of heaven killed 2 godly kings and met up with the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda. Swoosh! A white light flashed, and the pagoda entered the sword world. The sword of the burial of heaven disappeared in front of everyone's eyes again. When the hundreds of godly kings rushed over, they missed again. Everyone was shocked and angry. They were so angry that they cursed and roared angrily. They had never thought that a mysterious black sword would be so cunning and difficult to deal with. At the critical moment, a white-haired, experienced Star Lord made a suggestion calmly. "We can't go on like this. We can't trap that divine sword, but it's possible that it will kill us all one by one. We must report this to the Domain Lord and request the Domain Lord to take action. Everyone will join forces to destroy that divine sword and those dozen or so foreign race god kings." The 100 or so foreign god kings in the surroundings all calmed down from their greed and excitement. Everyone logically agreed with the white-haired Starlord's suggestion. Although they all wanted to obtain the divine sword, they wanted to preserve their lives even more. Shwa! Seeing that everyone agreed, the white-haired Astral Lord took out a messaging jade strip and sent a message to the Heavenly Strategy Domain Master, who was 80,000 kilometers away. At the same time, the Region Master of the Heavenly Strategies region was leading over 60 high-level God Kings in pursuit of Ji Tianqing. This team was at the forefront, the closest to Ji Tianqing in Dao Xingyun. They were only about 35,000 kilometers away. The Region Master of the Heavenly Strategies region and these high-level God Kings were charging with all their might and would soon catch up with Ji Tianqing. However, they were obviously holding back. They kept following behind, pretending that they could not catch up with Dao Xingyun and Ji Tianqing. These people were not stupid. They were all cautious. They did not want to be punished by Dao Xingyun, but they also did not want to confront Ji Tianqing head-on. They only hoped that Dao Xingyun would kill Ji Tianqing as soon as possible and end this battle. At this moment, the Region Master of the Heavenly Strategies region received the white-haired Starlord's message. He immediately fell into a dilemma. A few of his trusted subordinates beside him saw his hesitation and asked, "Region Master, what happened? Is there anything we can do for you? Is there anything we can help you with?" The Region Master of the Heavenly Strategies region did not hide anything from them. He said truthfully, a divine sword appeared behind the team. There were also a dozen of foreign races God Kings. They have already killed dozens of our brothers. I am considering whether to continue chasing Kenshin or to deal with that divine sword. These subordinates were not stupid. While they were shocked, they also suddenly understood. A divine sword? Was it Kenshin's sword that was knocked away by Lord Supreme? The Region Master of the Heavenly Strategies region nodded. That trusted subordinate said with certainty, if that's the case, then that divine sword can move freely as if it has a consciousness. It must be a peerless divine sword. Moreover, it seems that Kenshin's sword was knocked away. In fact, this might be Kenshin's scheme. After this person's reminder, the Region Master of the Heavenly Strategies region's eyes lit up. He suddenly had an idea. Good. Then I will report this to Lord Supreme. I will now destroy that divine sword and destroy Kenshin's scheme. This can also be considered as helping Lord Supreme, right? Of course. His subordinates nodded in agreement. Thus, the region master of the Heavenly Strategies region sent a message to Dao Xinyan. After reporting the situation, he led the group of God Kings and turned around to fly back. However, after flying for tens of thousands of miles and meeting the white-haired Star Master and the other God Kings, they did not see any trace of the Sword of the Burial of Heaven. The region master of the Heavenly Strategies region frowned and asked in a dignified tone, "Didn't you say that you were attacked by a divine sword and a dozen foreign races God Kings? Where is that sword? Where did it go?" The white-haired Star Master's expression was bitter. He explained awkwardly, "Region Master, that divine sword is very cunning. It is hiding." The others also nodded in agreement, "Yes. That divine sword will only sneak attack us when we are unprepared. Once there are too many of us, it will run away." The region master of the Heavenly Strategies region's expression became more and more unsightly. He sneered, "It's just a weapon. Even if it has some intelligence, it can't have such intelligence and scheming. Is that sword too smart or are you too stupid?" No one could answer this question. More than 100 God Kings' faces turned green. They stammered and could not explain clearly. The region master of the Heavenly Strategies region did not waste any time. He ordered in a deep voice, "Don't dawdle. Everyone, gather together and be on guard at all times. All high-level God Kings, use your divine abilities and secret skills to search for the divine sword." This method was indeed the wisest. More than 300 God Kings gathered together and were on guard. Of course, the Sword of the Burial of Heaven did not know where to start. Moreover, the region master of the Heavenly Strategies region was a 9th-degree God King. Together with dozens of high-level God Kings, they would definitely be able to find the Sword of the Burial of Heaven. But the problem was that the Sword of the Burial of Heaven had already left this place to meet up with Ji Tianqing. 500,000 miles away. Ji Tianqing and Dao Xinyan were still fighting. They quickly moved the battlefield, leaving behind fragments of heaven and earth along the way. Until now, the two of them were still in a stalemate. Neither of them was injured. But Dao Xinyan was full of confidence. He wanted to further undermine Ji Tianqing's confidence. He mocked and ridiculed, "As a Kenshin, you can't even hold your sword and were even sent flying. Kenshin, you don't deserve this name. Either change your name or kill yourself." Ji Tianqing sensed the Sword of the Burial of Heaven approaching quickly. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a playful smile. "The highest realm of the Sword Dao is to have no sword in hand and the world is a sword. I don't need a sword to kill you. What's more, my sword is back." Chapter 40. When Dao Xinyan heard the first two sentences, he felt that it was true. Although he didn't major in Sword Dao, he also believed that Ji Tianqing's words were the truth of Sword Dao. But the last sentence made him freeze on the spot. "Your sword is back." Dao Xinyan didn't know how to react. He thought that the sword had already been sent flying and fell hundreds of thousands of miles away. How could it be back? But a thought flashed through his mind, and he suddenly recalled the events from 1,000 years ago. Instantly, his body shook and disbelief shot out of his eyes. "Your sword, Burial of Heaven, is also resurrected?" As one of the 5 people who besieged Kenshin and killed Kenshin, he naturally knew that Kenshin's sword was called Burial of Heaven. And in that Burial of Heaven sword, there was a sword soul called Burial of Heaven. The sword soul had spirituality and wisdom. However, after Kenshin died, the 5 god emperors personally destroyed the Burial of Heaven sword. Everyone believed that the Burial of Heaven sword was completely destroyed and couldn't be restored. Even when he saw Kenshin being resurrected and returning with an identical Burial of Heaven sword, Dao Xinyan thought that it was a replica. After all, Kenshin being resurrected was shocking enough. How could the burial of heaven sword that had been destroyed for 1,000 years reappear? Now that he heard this sentence, he finally reacted. If the burial of heaven sword could return to Ji Tianqing's hands, it must be because of the burial of heaven sword's soul. As expected. What happened next confirmed Dao Xinyan's guess. Swoosh! A black light flew from the shattered sky and landed in Ji Tianqing's hands. Dao Xinyan looked over. It was the sword of burial of heaven. Seeing the burial of heaven sword fly back with his own eyes, he could no longer suppress the shock in his heart. He exclaimed in disbelief, "It really is the burial of heaven." It had been destroyed for 1,000 years, so how could it be revived? Kenshin, how did you do it? Ji Tianqing held the godly hammer in his left hand and the sword of burial of heaven in his right. He had regained his previous aura. Since the existence of the burial of heaven had been exposed, he no longer had to pretend to be weak. He. You want to know? Then, I'll let you do it personally. He sneered and didn't say anything else. He waved his divine hammer and the sword of burial of heaven and launched a fierce attack on Dao Xinyan. Life and death of the Thunder Sea. Sword of destruction. The godly hammer shot out billions of lightning bolts, forming a colorful sea of lightning that rained down on Dao Xinyan. The sword of burial of heaven absorbed the power of the five elements world and formed a giant golden sword that was tens of thousands of feet long. It slashed down from the sky. After fighting for so long, Ji Tianqing knew that it was time to end it. The burial of heaven had already told him about the situation of the foreign race's godly kings behind him. This was the best time to defeat them one by one. Rumble. Kaboom. Amidst the earth-shattering thunder, Dao Xinyan formed a divine seal with both hands and released the power of the heavenly Dao. It formed a shield around his body to resist the corrosion of the sea of lightning. No matter how violent the divine lightning was, it couldn't break through his shield of the heavenly Dao. Although Dao Xinyan would consume too much energy by doing so, it would accelerate the exhaustion of his energy. However, this was the safest and one of his most powerful defensive methods. After blocking the corrosion of the sea of lightning, Dao Xinyan waved the silver dragon divine spear with both hands, thrusting out spear shadows to block the sword of destruction. He could feel that the sword of destruction was formed by a powerful force comparable to the power of the heavenly Dao. It was extremely terrifying. He didn't expect the silver dragon divine spear to be able to defeat the sword of destruction. He only hoped to reduce the power of the sword light. In addition to his shield of the heavenly Dao, he would definitely be able to withstand this sword. However, he still underestimated the power of the sword of destruction. Bam! 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 Hundreds of silver dragon spear shadows crashed into the sword of destruction, but they couldn't withstand a single blow and collapsed. On the other hand, the sword of destruction's power and speed didn't decrease. It was still dazzling with golden light as it slashed down. Kaboom! Finally, the giant golden sword that was tens of thousands of feet long struck Dao Xinyan. It wasn't that he didn't want to dodge, but the sword chi and invisible suppressive force had already firmly restrained him. Moreover, he had the shield of the heavenly Dao, so he was 80% confident. However, the reality was beyond his expectations. Amidst an earth-shattering sound, the shield formed by the heavenly Dao was actually broken by the giant sword. At that moment, Dao Xinyan's eyes widened, and his pupils constricted. Deep shock filled his heart. He finally realized that the special force that formed this sword light was the legendary power of the world. It was the magical power that could create everything and evolve the entire world from nothing. In the ancient legends, it was the power of the Creator, and it was comparable to the power of the heavenly Dao. It's over. I've overestimated myself. Dao Xinyan suddenly regretted it, but it was already too late. The dazzling golden sword light drowned his body. His sturdy and broad arm was instantly severed by the sword light, and a pile of debris splattered everywhere. This was an avatar, not a body of flesh and blood, so there was naturally no scene of blood splattering everywhere. However, Dao Xinyan's entire right arm was severed, and his arm shattered into pieces, splattering everywhere. Such a scene still sent chills down one's spine. In the next moment, the power of the sword light completely exploded, and Dao Xingyan was sent flying, rolling and crashing thousands of miles away. Ah! You deserve to die. Dao Xingyan, who was shocked and angry, let out a low roar like muffled thunder. This was the first time he had been injured in the battle with Ji Tianqing. Moreover, the injury was so serious that it accelerated the loss of his power, and his strength was also weakened. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to chase after Dao Xingyan and sneered. I've already said that your avatar will definitely die. Are you angry? Do you want to take revenge? Then let your real body come here personally. He had angered Dao Xingyan again because he wanted to test what Dao Xingyan's real body was doing. How important was it? Although the avatar of the god of the underworld had been destroyed, and the real body had not come to take revenge, he was already confident. However, Dao Xingyan's reaction confirmed his guess even more. As expected, Dao Xingyan shut up when he mentioned that his real body would come here personally. When he was sent flying for 800 miles, Ji Tianqing arrived in front of him again and slashed down with his sword again. Sword breaking 9 heavens. Next, the two of them fought fiercely in the sky, and continued to move the battlefield. Although it was very difficult for ordinary sword skills to hurt Dao Xingyan. This could accelerate the depletion of Dao Xingyan's power, and make his injuries worsen. Ji Tianqing also could not continuously use the Sword of Destruction in a short period of time. He needed some buffer time. In White Dragon's words, it was called skill cooldown. Finally, after the two of them fought for another 15 minutes, they moved the battlefield millions of miles away. At this moment, the region master of heavenly strategies caught up with more than 300 god kings. Ji Tianqing waved the burial of heaven again and used the sword of destruction. Dao Xingyan had not been able to dodge the previous sword strike. Now that he was severely injured and weak, it was even more impossible for him to dodge this attack. Boom! Crack! Under the gaze of hundreds of foreign race god kings, the huge golden sword slashed down on Dao Xingyan. Everyone saw with their own eyes that Dao Xingyan's body collapsed under the sword light. He was split into two, and countless fragments flew out. Those fragments scattered in the shattered world, turned into pure divine power, and quickly dissipated. Instantly, everyone was dumbfounded. Chapter 40-41. For hundreds of years, the Heavenly Strategy Region Master and the other godly kings had held Lord Jizun in high esteem. In their knowledge, Lord Jizun was a supreme expert who had surpassed the godly king realm and was unparalleled. After witnessing what had happened today, the illusions and reverence in their hearts were shattered. First, Lord Jizun fought with Kenshin, who was a peak godly king. After fighting for so long, Lord Jizun was still unable to kill Kenshin, which made everyone feel surprised and disappointed. Then, thousands of miles of heaven and earth were shattered, and countless innocent people died. Lord Jizun could not do anything to Kenshin. Now, it was even more ridiculous. Lord Jizun was hacked into pieces by Kenshin. The Heavenly Strategy Region Master and the other godly kings could not believe this scene. They could not accept that Lord Jizun, who was above the godly king realm, could not even defeat Kenshin, who was a peak godly king. Could it be that Kenshin had also surpassed the godly king realm and reached Lord Jizun's realm? No. Lord Jizun was also a peak godly king. He was not a Jizun. He had lied and deceived everyone. This thought flashed through the minds of the Heavenly Strategy Region Master and the other godly kings at the same time, and they believed it without a doubt. Their spiritual pillar had collapsed, and so did their faith and courage. Everyone was stunned as they looked at the pieces flying in the sky and fusing with the heaven and earth. They were not sad, and they forgot about their fear. They were only shocked and in disbelief, and their expressions were complicated. Until the pieces in the sky dissipated, and the loud noise between heaven and earth disappeared. Ji Tianqing held the godly hammer and the sword of burial of heaven, and turned to look at the crowd. Only then did they regain their senses. Although Ji Tianqing did not do anything, his cold expression and the murderous aura that had not dissipated from his body gave the other godly kings a fright. Lord Jizun is dead. Everyone, run. Even Lord Jizun could not defeat Kenshin. We are no match for him. Don't seek your own death. It's over. We can't escape this calamity. Lord Jizun, please think of a way. Don't hesitate, run. Kenshin is not alone. He has more than 10 companions. The god kings of other races who were filled with fear and anxiety all let out cries and shouts. A commotion broke out in the crowd. The god kings around the heavenly stratagem region master were still fine. Even though they were anxious and flustered, they didn't dare to run away. They all looked at the region master and waited for him to make a decision. However, at the very back of the group, the weaker and more heavily injured foreign god kings were already retreating. They were prepared to flee. This scene was rather comical and absurd. Over 300 divine king powerhouses were actually frightened to such an extent when facing Ji Tianqing alone, ready to flee at any time. This was simply inconceivable, extremely humiliating, and laughable. The heavenly policy region master's expression was extremely ugly. He was both indignant and helpless. He looked around and glanced at the foreign god kings. He growled angrily, "What are you afraid of?" He was alone, so what was there to be afraid of? Don't forget, we still have over 300 people. A large number of ants can kill an elephant. If each of us stab him with a knife or a sword, it would be enough to kill him 10 times. What's more, he has been fighting with Lord Supreme Martial Artist for so long. He's already a spent force. Hearing his words, the god kings felt their faces burning. They all felt guilty and ashamed. At the same time, they regained some of their confidence. Even the god kings at the back of the group who were about to run away stopped in their tracks. They looked very hesitant. The region master struck while the iron was hot. He shouted in an impassioned tone, "Everyone, my brothers. This is the heavenly policy star, our territory and home. We have nowhere to run, so we must protect its integrity and safety. Only if we join forces to kill Kenshin will everyone have a chance to live. Otherwise, everyone will be killed by him, and the entire heavenly policy star field will be plunged into chaos. I believe that all of you know how serious the consequences are. Therefore, I ask that all of you follow me and join forces for one last time. If we can't win this battle, we will all be buried here." As soon as he finished speaking, the heavenly strategy region lord brandished his divine sword and took the lead to charge towards Ji Tianqing. He shouted loudly, and his body burst out with blazing killing intent. It was like a ball of flame that streaked across the sky. More than a dozen of his trusted generals also raised their divine weapons and shouted hot-blooded slogans as they charged with him. Not far from him, many god kings were affected by his aura. They were also hot-blooded as they roared and attacked. However, the human heart was the most complicated, and it was also the hardest to reach a consensus. Among the 300 god kings, 70% of them were hot-blooded warriors. However, there were still over 100 cowards. When over 200 god kings roared and charged forward, surrounding Ji Tianqing, there were over 100 god kings who turned around and fled. They sped up and fled into the distance. These god kings who were running away were not stupid. They did not go back the way they came, and they would not run back to the heavenly policy divine abode. They split into several groups and fled in different directions. Their goal was the same, which was to get away from Ji Tianqing and hide in a safe place. Then, they would try to escape from the heavenly policy star and return to the stars they ruled. Swish! Swish! Swish. Swish. Over 100 divine lights streaked across the sky and quickly disappeared into the horizon. The Heavenly Strategy Region Master and more than 200 divine kings had just formed a circle and surrounded Ji Tianqing. When the Region Master saw the 100 God Kings running away, he was so angry that his face turned ashen, and his body trembled. He wished that he could chase after them and capture them to behead them in front of everyone. However, those people ran very quickly and had already disappeared without a trace. The Region Master and more than 200 God Kings had already started fighting with Ji Tianqing. They could not leave at all. Under such circumstances, he could only forcefully suppress his anger and remain calm. He swore in his heart that if he could kill Kenshin today and survive, he would definitely find those deserters and behead them in public. Rumble. Bam. 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 More than 260 God Kings of other races used all kinds of divine abilities and ultimate skills to surround and attack Ji Tianqing. Divine techniques that blotted out the sky, sword and saber lights that blotted out the sky, as well as wind, fire, and lightning, poured down like a torrential flood. Ji Tianqing's figure was drowned by all kinds of divine techniques, and a series of muffled sounds could be heard. On the surface, this battlefield covered an area of tens of thousands of miles. Heaven and earth were drowned in divine light, and it was extremely shocking. However, in reality, Ji Tianqing was completely unharmed under the intense tremors of heaven and earth. He had the protection of the primordial chaos bell and the indestructible golden body, so he could block 99% of the divine techniques. Occasionally, there were divine techniques that he could not block, but when they landed on his body, they were like tickles. After a while, Ji Tianqing blocked the first wave of attacks from the God Kings and took the opportunity to counterattack. He let out a low roar and unleashed his ultimate trump card, the 10-directional vanishing shadows. 9 clones appeared around him. Swish. 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 The 9 clones appeared in the sky and brandished the divine hammer and the sword of burial of heaven respectively as they attacked the surrounding God Kings. Chapter 40-42. Each of Ji Tianqing's doppelgangers had the battle prowess of a peak divine king. They could hold their own. Each doppelganger could deal with more than 20 divine kings of the foreign races. They could even kill those divine kings one by one without being defeated. The 9 doppelgangers had arranged for more than 200 divine kings of the foreign races. As for Ji Tianqing's main body, he was only going for the Heavenly Strategy Region Master. His goal was to kill the Heavenly Strategy Region Master first. The Heavenly Strategy Region Master was surrounded by 12 of his trusted subordinates. These subordinates were either the Heavenly Strategy Divine Residence's guard commanders, great generals, or the Star Lord of a certain star. The 12 of them were all high-level divine kings. They were brave, battle-hardened, and had a strong will to fight. Seeing Ji Tianqing charging at them, the 12 subordinates roared angrily. They charged forward without any regard for their own safety, protecting the Heavenly Strategy Region Master. Ji Tianqing did not put the 12 subordinates in his eyes. With a divine hammer in one hand and a divine sword in the other, he attacked with both hands. Swish swish swish. Kaboom. Dazzling sword lights flew everywhere. The deafening sound of thunder enveloped the 12 subordinates. Following a series of bang 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 sounds, a few divine kings were struck by the sword lights. Blood splattered everywhere. They screamed in pain as they were sent flying. The other few people had their heads and faces blackened by the thunderbolts. Black smoke rose from their bodies, and they fell to the ground of the ruins. Both sides had only exchanged blows for a short while, but 9 of the subordinates were severely injured. The other 3 were slightly injured. They gritted their teeth and endured their injuries as they stood guard beside the Heavenly Strategy Region Master. Of course, the Heavenly Strategy Region Master was not idle. He found an opportunity to counterattack. Sword lights filled the sky as they pierced toward Ji Tianqing. However, before the sword lights could reach Ji Tianqing, they were blocked by the primal chaos primordial bell. The 10-zhang-tall primordial bell floated above Ji Tianqing's head. It shone with 5-colored divine light and formed an oval-shaped shield that protected Ji Tianqing. After shattering hundreds of sword lights, the 5-colored light barrier only trembled a few times but did not shatter. The region master of the Heavenly Strategies region was shocked and unconvinced. He still wanted to fight side by side with his 3 trusted aides to continue besieging Ji Tianqing. However, their attacks were easily neutralized by Ji Tianqing. On the contrary, it was Ji Tianqing who unleashed his divine ability that made 3 of his trusted subordinates bleed from their 7 orifices and pass out on the spot. Even the Heavenly Policy Domain Master was wounded by the sword light. Bloody holes appeared on his chest and back. Seeing that the situation was far from good, the Heavenly Policy Region Master panicked and retreated in a panic. Ji Tianqing took the opportunity to pursue and attack. He swung the divine hammer and divine sword with all his might and cast all kinds of spells. The domain master of the Heavenly Strategy domain was exhausted from defending himself. He was trapped in the whirlpool of sword light and thunderbolts, unable to escape. After just 7 moves, the Heavenly Policy Region Master, who was riddled with wounds, was cut into several pieces by the sword light. Blood splattered everywhere. The broken corpse fell from the sky, and a godhead flew out from the head and fled into the distance in a panic. However, Ji Tianqing was prepared. He raised his sword and slashed it down, cutting the godhead into pieces. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, the diamond-shaped godhead turned into a dozen pieces and fell from the sky. Just like that, the Heavenly Policy Region Master died before his 12 trusted subordinates. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out a golden light to collect the godhead fragments of the Heavenly Policy Region Master. When he turned his head to look at the surrounding divine kings, he saw the 12 severely injured generals and a few divine kings of foreign races. Their faces were filled with fear. Obviously, everyone had seen the process of him killing the Heavenly Policy Region Master. Not long ago, Dao Xinyan's clone was killed by Ji Tianqing. Now, the Heavenly Policy Region Master was killed as well. Their 2 pillars of support and leader had died one after another under Ji Tianqing's sword. This caused the already low morale of the divine kings to collapse completely. The Region Master is dead. Quick, run! No one knew who shouted. His tone was too anxious and panicked, causing his voice to become shrill. Once this was said, the battle on the battlefield paused for a moment. Many divine kings of foreign races turned to look at the center of the battlefield, looking for the source of the shout. After knowing that the Heavenly Policy Region Master had been killed, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Their faces became panicked, and they immediately lost the will to continue fighting. Many of them only made a few feints before retreating, waiting for an opportunity to escape. Panic and fear were contagious in the crowd, and it spread very quickly. In the blink of an eye, more than 200 divine kings lost their will to fight. All of them tried their best to escape. Swish! 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 Now that things had developed to this stage, no one cared about integrity and dignity. No one cared about the survival of the Heavenly Policy Star or the billions of people. There was only one thought in everyone's mind, and that was to escape as fast as possible and as far as possible. Ji Tianqing and his 9 avatars pursued, taking advantage of the opportunity to kill the fleeing divine kings. More than 200 people split into several groups and fled in different directions. This way, their chances of survival would be higher. However, Ji Tianqing and his 9 avatars also split up, looking as though they would not let anyone go. As countless sword lights and lightning flashed, deafening explosions rang out, and the number of divine kings rapidly decreased. With every breath of time, a few foreign race god kings would be beheaded, their bodies pulverized. The muffled sounds of divine arts clashing and shrill screams echoed through the world. Ji Tianqing and his 9 avatars pursued the divine kings, picking up the quintessence fragments scattered in the sky. After an entire hour, this pursuit that spanned millions of miles finally ended. Not a single one of the 264 divine kings managed to escape. They were all killed. Ji Tianqing took all the quintessence fragments, interspatial rings, and mediocre grade and superior grade king artifacts. Swoosh! 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 Ji Tianqing's main body stopped in a sea of clouds. He took out a divine elixir and consumed it. He silently circulated his divine arts and recovered his divine power. At the same time, his 9 doppelgangers rushed back from all directions. If those avatars did not carry any spoils of war, he could have used a secret technique to make the 9 avatars dissipate millions of miles away. However, each avatar carried a large amount of spoils of war, so they had to meet up with his main body. Very quickly, 45 minutes passed. The 9 avatars returned to Ji Tianqing's side. After handing over their spoils of war, they disappeared one after another. Ji Tianqing kept more than 260 quintessence fragments, interspatial rings, and more than 300 divine artifacts into his interspatial ring. There were too many spoils of war. After leaving Heavenly Policy Planet, he would find time to organize and count them. Currently, after circulating his divine arts and recuperating, he had recovered a lot of his divine power. His mental state was also full. Now, he had to think about how to leave Heavenly Policy Planet. Although Dao Xingyun and the Heavenly Policy Region Master were dead, and more than 200 divine kings of the foreign races were also killed. However, Dao Xingyun's sky-shrouding formation still sealed off the entire Heavenly Policy Planet. There were nearly 10,000 divine sovereigns scattered all over Heavenly Policy Planet guarding more than 300 formations. They still did not know about Dao Xingyun and the Heavenly Policy Region Master's death. If they did not get rid of them, the sky-shrouding formation could still seal off Heavenly Policy Planet for many years. Chapter 40-43. Ji Tianqing stood in the sea of clouds and looked up at the sky. The boundless sky was covered by the 5-colored light screen, and he couldn't see the end of it. Ji Tianqing used his God's Eye mystic technique to stare at the 5-colored light screen and observe it carefully for a long time. He had to admit that Dao Xingyun's foresight, knowledge, and attainments in array formations were indeed very shocking. Although the 5-colored light screen looked like it was only 1 foot thick, the 5-colored light screen covered the entire sky. However, the 5-colored light screen that enveloped the entire Heavenly Policy Planet was seamless and had no loopholes to speak of. If one wanted to use brute force to attack and destroy the 5-colored light screen, no matter how powerful the attack was, it would be dispersed and dissolved by the light screen. In the end, the entire Heavenly Strategy Planet would bear the brunt of the attack. In other words, unless Ji Tianqing could destroy the entire Heavenly Strategy Planet in one move, he would not be able to break the 5-colored light screen. Otherwise, no matter how powerful his ultimate skills were, he would not be able to break the 5-colored light screen. The more than 300 divine arrays that were scattered all over the Heavenly Strategy Planet were actually able to merge into one seamlessly after they started operating. There were no flaws at all. It was obvious how precise the 300-plus grand formations were. Such a flawless heaven-shrouding array cannot be broken by brute force. I can only find a way to break it. After a long while, Ji Tianqing looked away and muttered to himself with a serious expression. Since he wanted to break the heaven-shrouding array, he had to find a certain divine array and break through a node before finding a way to break it. Ji Tianqing decisively took action. He took out the supreme-grade king-grade god-slaying battleship and steered it toward the southwest. When he observed the 5-colored light screen, he saw the hidden array network in the sky. That was also the path of the divine array's energy flow. One end of that huge array network extended toward the center of the heaven-shrouding array, while the other end extended toward the southwest. Ji Tianqing compared the geographical map of the heavenly strategy planet to that array network and guessed that there must be a divine array at the southwest border of this continent. The god-slaying battleship was extremely fast. It only took 6 hours to cross half of the continent. When the sun set, Ji Tianqing arrived at the southwest border of the continent. This place was a sea of dark green trees that covered the undulating hills, stretching as far as the eye could see. After passing through this sea of trees with a circumference of hundreds of thousands of miles, one would reach the dark golden coastline and see a large stretch of beach. If they continued forward, they would reach the vast sea. Ji Tianqing kept the god-slaughtering battleship and strode across the sky above the forest. He flew into the depths of the forest. As he advanced, he observed the 5-colored canopy above his head. Although, on the surface, there was nothing unusual. However, he could see with his divine eye's secret technique that the origin of the formation was in the depths of the forest. As it turned out, his judgment was correct. An hour later, he entered the depths of the vast forest and discovered an unusual place. There were 2 unusual details here. Firstly, this was just an ordinary forest. It wasn't a spirit vein or a holy land for cultivation. However, in this forest that stretched for hundreds of thousands of miles, divine power was abnormally abundant. Secondly, every hill and mountain in the sea of trees was covered by a dense forest, and there were many birds and beasts living in it. Only a few mountain ranges in the depths of the forest, which had a circumference of tens of thousands of miles, were unbelievably quiet. There was no sign of life. Ji Tianqing's intuition told him that this was the location of the formation. As expected. When he used his divine eye's secret technique, he discovered that this area was enveloped by an invisible formation. An upper-grade king-level invisible formation sealed off an area with a circumference of 30,000 miles. This made it difficult for anyone who passed by this place to notice anything strange, unable to see any clues. Only a formation Dao expert like Ji Tianqing would be able to find traces of it. Boom! Crack! Ji Tianqing swung the burial of heaven without hesitation and slashed out a 1,000-foot-long sword light with all his might. With a thunderous explosion, countless fragments of divine light burst out from the seemingly empty sky. A huge hole was cut in the invisible divine formation on the spot. The invisible effect was broken, and the situation inside the formation appeared clearly before Ji Tianqing's eyes. The area with a circumference of 30,000 miles, which was supposed to be a mountain range and a sea of trees, had been flattened. There were densely packed gullies on the ground, forming billions of formation patterns that formed a heaven and earth formation. In the middle of the formation, there was a 5-colored altar that was 1,000 feet tall and 10,000 feet wide. 36 divine lords were sitting cross-legged around the altar. There were 3 circles inside and outside, and each of them was sitting in a specific position. These divine lords were concentrating on maintaining the operation of the altar and ensuring the stable operation of the heaven and earth formation. Of course, that tall altar was the eye of the formation that Dao Xingyan had asked him to set up. There were 365 similar array eyes in every corner of the heavenly policy planet that connected so many heaven and earth formations to form the heaven and earth formation. Just as I expected. Ji Tianqing walked through the gap in the invisible formation and swaggered towards the altar. He came from the sky with a dignified and sacred aura, and there was a cold smile on his face. The 36 divine lords who were concentrating on the formation were immediately awakened. When they saw Ji Tianqing's appearance and felt his powerful aura and divine power, they were alert, and their eyes were filled with fear. Who are you? Why did you trespass into the forbidden area? Do you know that this is a capital offense? Lad, I advise you to retreat immediately. Otherwise, the Region Master will not forgive you. What are you waiting for? Quickly send a message to the commander so that the Region Master will know that someone has trespassed into the forbidden area. Obviously, these 36 divine lords were too lowly and did not know the truth of the matter. Their direct superior was a commander of the heavenly policy divine abode. With their status, they couldn't even meet the region master of heavenly strategies, let alone Dao Xingyun. They only knew that they were ordered to guard this forbidden area and not allow anyone to trespass. They did not know the inside story at all. They did not know the effects of this forbidden area, nor did they know who the forbidden area was used to deal with. They also did not know that the region master and Dao Xingyun had been killed. Ji Tianqing looked at these divine lords calmly and said, "This has nothing to do with you. If you don't want to die, get lost now." If it was not necessary, he would not kill these lowly lackeys. However, these divine lords did not know how powerful he was, nor did they know his identity and purpose. Not only did none of them escape from the altar, but they all looked furious. They took out their divine weapons and surrounded Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. "Lad, how dare you trespass into the forbidden area and still be so arrogant? Are you tired of living? A foreign race lad dares to behave atrociously on the heavenly policy star. You must be tired of living. Brothers, let's not talk nonsense with this guy. Let's just kill him. As the saying goes, the more people there are, the more courage there is." These divine lords knew that Ji Tianqing was powerful, but they wanted to kill him with their numbers. Amidst the shouting and cursing, the crowd waved their divine weapons and attacked Ji Tianqing. Immediately, the world energy absorbed by the altar rushed into the heaven-mending pearl at an extremely fast speed. The heaven-mending pearl devoured the world energy too quickly, causing a dazzling divine light vortex to appear around the altar. In such a situation, it was like a giant whale opening its bloody mouth to suck up the water in a pond. How could a mere 10,000 feet tall altar withstand the devouring of the heaven-mending pearl? In the blink of an eye, the world energy in the altar was completely devoured by the heaven-mending pearl. The altar sped up its operation, absorbing more world energy to maintain the operation of the formation. However, the speed at which the altar absorbed the world energy was dozens of times slower than the heaven-mending pearl's devouring speed. The altar couldn't support the heaven-mending pearl, so it couldn't support it anymore. It began to shake violently, and cracks appeared on its surface, accelerating its collapse. Boom, 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 as time passed, the altar shook more and more violently, and began to shatter and collapse. In less than 10 breaths, the entire altar fell apart, and the heaven-shrouding formation collapsed. However, the heaven-mending pearl's devouring didn't stop. The terrifying devouring power extended into the sky along the veins of the formation, greedily absorbing the 5-colored sky curtain's power. The 5-colored sky curtain above Ji Tianqing's head became thinner and dimmer at a speed visible to the naked eye. The power in this area was insufficient, so of course, it had to borrow power from other areas. As a result, the heaven-shrouding formation in other areas accelerated the absorption of the world energy to fill the weakness of the 5-colored sky curtain. When Ji Tianqing activated the heaven-mending pearl with all his strength, the devouring power exploded to the limit. The two heaven-shrouding formations closest to him also began to shake violently, accelerating their collapse and collapse. The two heaven-shrouding formations were in the south and west of the continent, and they were also guarded by dozens of Sir Gods. However, those Sir Gods were dumbfounded, and they were helpless against this sudden situation. They could only watch as the altar collapsed. The facts proved that Ji Tianqing's plan had succeeded. This was a good start, and it lifted his spirits. He continued to activate the heaven-mending pearl, crazily devouring the world energy. Next, the heaven-shrouding formations scattered all over the heavenly policy continent collapsed one after another. Chapter 40-45. When the heaven and earth divine arrays collapsed, the heaven-mending orb also absorbed a huge amount of heaven and earth divine power. Half of the divine power was purified by the heaven-mending orb and turned into pure energy that was absorbed by the heaven-mending orb. The other half was transferred to the 5 elements world by the heaven-mending orb, causing a divine power storm to sweep through the five elements world. The citizens of the five elements world were all excited, and they saw the five-colored divine light that covered the sky and the five-colored spiritual liquid that filled the sky. The entire world began to expand, and all living things grew wildly. Countless birds and beasts gained intelligence and entered a state of cultivation. As for the human martial artists and geniuses, they obtained unimaginable benefits, and their strength and realm increased slightly. Next, as long as they cultivated diligently and absorbed the heaven and earth divine power, their strength would quickly increase. Those martial artists who were stuck in a bottleneck and could not break through in a short period of time also obtained a chance to advance. Without a doubt, after this divine power storm, another batch of divine spirits would appear in the five elements world. Compared to the huge changes in the five elements world, the heaven-mending orb also obtained great benefits, but the changes were not as obvious. It only became more dazzling, and its aura was more complete and restrained. But other than that, there were no obvious changes. As time passed, the heaven-mending orb devoured more and more divine power, and its strength and aura were about to recover to their peak. But recovering to its peak was not the end, the heaven-mending orb's power would continue to increase. Unknowingly, 4 hours passed. Of the 300 or so heaven and earth divine arrays scattered all over the heavenly policy planet, more than 50 had already collapsed. These collapsed altars and heaven and earth divine arrays were not far from each other. Most of them were scattered on the same continent, and a few were at the borders of neighboring continents. The 1,000 or so monarch god experts guarding these arrays were all in a state of shock and confusion. They did not even see the enemy, nor did they know what was going on. After the altars and heaven and earth divine arrays collapsed, they did not know what to do, and could only report the news to their direct superiors and ask for instructions. But only now did they realize that they could not contact their superiors at all. No matter how many communication jade slips they sent out, they could not receive a reply. This situation filled the monarchs with shock and worry, and they had all kinds of bad guesses. Everyone realized that something big must have happened. But no one knew what was going on. For a time, everyone was in a state of panic and unease. The divine lords that were guarding the various arrays were contacting each other and asking about each other's situation. However, after a long discussion, they still couldn't come up with an answer. In short, they were very aggrieved, confused, and panicked. Ji Tianqing was still casting spells, and the heaven-mending pearl was still crazily devouring the divine power of heaven and earth. The five-colored canopy that sealed the heavenly policy planet began to expand from the center, and a slight change occurred. It was visible to the naked eye that the five-colored light curtain in that area had become thinner. The surrounding network of formations that extended out were like bulging blue veins, very conspicuous. After all, they were desperately absorbing the divine power of heaven and earth from other divine formations. But even so, the great heaven-shrouding formation was too big. The speed at which the veins of the great heaven-shrouding formation mobilized divine power was far from being able to keep up with the devouring speed of the heaven-mending pearl. Therefore, the heaven and earth divine formations were still collapsing one after another. Pang pang pang. Rumble. From time to time, loud, muffled booms could be heard from every corner of every continent on heavenly policy planet. Every loud noise represented the collapse and destruction of a heaven and earth divine formation. There were even some divine lords who had slower reactions or were dumber. They tried to stop the collapse of the divine array and cast spells to block it. The result was no surprise. Their divine power was also completely devoured. Even if they sensed that something was wrong and desperately struggled and retreated, they couldn't escape. In the end, they were all devoured by the heaven-mending pearl and died on the spot. Their divine bodies also turned into ashes. Seeing the miserable end of those divine lords, the others didn't dare to go near the altar. They could only watch the altar collapse and the heaven and earth divine formations collapse. Time passed quickly. An entire day passed just like that. The world of 5 elements had obtained an immeasurable amount of divine power of heaven and earth. The divine power storm that enveloped the entire world would continue for a long time. The heaven-mending pearl had also recovered to its peak state and its power was still increasing. It seemed to have the potential to surpass a king-level divine artifact. Ji Tianqing stopped casting spells and activating the power of the heaven-mending pearl. Because the more than 300 heaven and earth divine formations that formed the heaven-shrouding array had all collapsed and been destroyed. Those divine formations were the foundation of the heaven-shrouding array. Since the foundation was destroyed, the heaven-shrouding array no longer existed and was destroyed. The 5-colored light curtain that sealed the heavenly policy planet had already been torn into pieces and turned into billions of divine light fragments that scattered around the world. Such a rare scene was witnessed by billions of people on the heavenly policy planet. Countless people cried out in shock, worry and confusion. No one could answer them. However, their worries and concerns were not unfounded. After a short while, an unexpected disaster swept across the entire heavenly policy planet. Previously, the heaven-shrouding array had sealed the entire heavenly policy planet and used more than half of the divine power of heaven and earth on the planet. Now that the heaven-shrouding array had collapsed and more than half of the divine power of heaven and earth had been sucked away by the heaven-mending pearl, the heavenly policy planet had returned to its normal state. The result was obvious. The heavenly policy star's spatial barrier began to crumble. Countless cracks appeared, and densely packed gaps appeared. There were also violent vibrations between heaven and earth. The earth shook, jumped, and trembled, causing a terrifying earthquake. Several continents shook violently. The sky also began to collapse and crack. Countless spatial cracks appeared, and a large patch of pitch-black void appeared. Rumble, bam. 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 The eruption of a super-earthquake caused a series of chain reactions. Several continents were faced with tsunamis that blotted out the sky. The continental plates were also shattered. Vast mountains and rivers collapsed and shattered. Lava and volcanoes erupted violently from the planet's core, blotting out the sky. The space barrier shattered and the sky collapsed. Naturally, it was eroded by the void. A large patch of darkness began to appear in the sky above the heavenly policy planet. Boundless spatial storms surged into the heavenly strategy planet, wreaking havoc and destroying everything in their path. Such a terrifying disaster was equivalent to a natural disaster. If the heavenly policy region lord and a few hundred divine kings were still alive, they could still resist and resolve it. However, those divine kings were all dead. There were less than 30 divine kings left on the heavenly policy planet. In the face of such a terrifying disaster, they were also helpless. They could only watch helplessly as a few continents shattered, as countless divine kingdoms collapsed and were destroyed. Tens of thousands of cities were destroyed by the void storms and the blazing divine fire. Chapter 40-46. Mountains and rivers were destroyed, homes were destroyed, and billions of alien lifeforms died in blood and fire, turning into ashes. That tragic scene played out everywhere on the heavenly strategy planet. Even though Ji Tianqing had left the heavenly strategy planet and was in the void, he still couldn't bear to see the tragic scene. He could even hear faint screams and roars coming from the various continents. No one could calculate the casualties on the heavenly strategy planet for the time being. However, Ji Tianqing had observed more than half of the heavenly strategy planet. He could roughly estimate the result from the damage done to a few continents. There were hundreds of billions of alien lifeforms on the heavenly strategy planet. In this calamity, at least 80% of them were affected. Of these 80% of living beings, 70 to 80% were injured. The number of deaths should be no less than 30%. A rough estimate put the number of deaths on the heavenly strategy planet at more than 20 billion. Obviously, this could no longer be described as a disaster. It should be called a calamity. However, who could be blamed for this? On the surface, Ji Tianqing was the main culprit. If he hadn't destroyed the heaven-shrouding formation, this calamity wouldn't have happened. However, he was also a victim. He had only destroyed the heaven-shrouding formation to protect himself and escape. The real culprits were Dao Xingyun, the heavenly strategy region lord, and the few hundred alien god kings. Looking at the tragic state of the heavenly strategy planet, Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, when he set up the heaven-shrouding formation, Dao Xingyun had already made plans and preparations. Even if he had to destroy the entire heavenly strategy planet, he would still kill me. Although I killed his clone and ruined his plan, I also triggered a calamity and caused the heavenly strategy planet to be plunged into misery and suffering. If Dao Xingyun knew about this result, he probably wouldn't be sad about the loss of the heavenly strategy planet. He would only be angry and regretful that he couldn't kill me. Such a tragic calamity will definitely alarm the heavenly Tao and send down its wrath, right? Thinking up to this point, Ji Tianqing looked up into the void and thought to himself, although I was forced to defend and only attack to protect myself, I still have a lot to do with this. However, I'm still involved in this huge karma. I should be punished by the heavens, right? According to past experience, even if the heavenly tribulation were to descend, it would only descend after the calamity was over. Thus, Ji Tianqing observed the heavenly policy star's movements and waited for the disaster to end. The flow of time seemed to have slowed down. Only half a day had passed, yet it felt so long. 12 hours later, the chaotic and calamitous heavenly policy planet gradually calmed down. Regardless of whether it was the shattered spatial barrier, the collapsed sky, or the collapsed earth, everything was gradually restored under the restoration of the heavenly Tao. Seeing that the disaster was over, the non-humankind beings, who had just experienced blood, fire, suffering, and death, all cheered excitedly, as if they had just survived the disaster. However, the sadness and heavy atmosphere still overshadowed the joy and excitement of surviving. Even though the disaster was over, the heavenly strategy planet was still in ruins. Countless souls had perished, and blood flowed like rivers. The living people still had to treat the injured, settle the dead, and rebuild their homes and countries in the future. Of course, this was a long-term matter, so it would not be mentioned for now. In the dark and cold void. Seeing that the calamity had finally subsided, Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked into the depths of the void, quietly waiting for the wrath of heaven to come. As expected, the heavenly Tao was furious. In the depths of the vast and boundless void, a dazzling blood-red light lit up, as if a raging fire was burning a prairie for thousands of miles. Amidst the blood-red light, there were billions of lightning bolts flashing, and deafening thunder roaring. This was a sign of the heavenly Tao's anger. The blood-red light and billions of lightning proved the words, furious. One could imagine how angry the heavenly Tao was. Ji Tianqing felt the mighty heavenly might, and his pupils constricted. He could not help but tighten his grip on the burial of heaven's sword and divine hammer. He also activated the power of the indestructible golden body and the primordial chaos bell to the extreme. The wrath of the heavenly Tao naturally could not be avoided or resisted. Since he could not avoid it, he could only resist and resolve it with all his might. However, when the blood-red light surged and billions of lightning bolts formed red lightning pillars and bombarded him, he realized that something was wrong. Those tens of thousands of red lightning pillars were all bombarding the heavenly policy planet. Ji Tianqing, who was 200 million miles away from the blood-red light, seemed to have been forgotten and ignored. Not a single bolt of lightning or a single streak of bloody light struck him. This, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned with a puzzled look on his face. He did not understand. He should be one of the two people with the greatest karma and could be considered half of the culprit. Why didn't the heavenly Tao punish him? As for the tens of thousands of red lightning pillars that landed on the heavenly policy planet, they also scattered and landed everywhere. Those who were hit by the wrath of the heavenly Tao and the red lightning pillars were the 100 or so divine kings who ran away and the divine king overlords guarding a few continents. It was as if the heavenly Tao was angrily rebuking them. As overlords and guardians of the heavenly policy planet, you didn't save them and caused the deaths of billions of people. You should be severely punished. Not only were the divine kings who were struck by lightning and struck by the heavenly Tao dumbfounded, even Ji Tianqing was a bit dumbfounded. How did this happen? Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. Then, an idea flashed across his mind as he thought of a possibility. Maybe this is just the first punishment of the heavenly Tao, just an appetizer. Let's punish those divine kings first. Next, the heavenly Tao will send down an even more terrifying punishment to punish me and Tao Xingyun. Thinking of this possibility, Ji Tianqing did not dare to let his guard down and continued to be vigilant. On the continents of the heavenly policy planet, the muffled sound of thunder sounded one after another. Those divine kings who were struck by lightning were already severely injured and were very weak. Now that they were being punished by the heavenly Tao, their fates were even more tragic. Almost 80% of the divine kings were killed by the heavenly Tao divine lightning on the spot and turned into ashes. Only about 20% of the divine kings were lucky enough to survive, but their injuries were extremely terrible and they were on the verge of death. The punishment of the heavenly Tao soon ended and the heavenly policy planet returned to normal. At this moment, Ji Tianqing looked at the bloody light with a serious expression. He had also accumulated his divine power to the maximum and was ready to attack. He thought that it should be his turn now. Unexpectedly, the bloody light gradually dissipated, and the billions of lightning bolts surging in the bloody light also quickly disappeared. After a short 10 breaths, the strange phenomenon in the void dissipated. The void returned to its usual darkness and coldness, as if nothing had happened. This, the heavenly Tao's punishment ended just like that. The heavenly Tao actually didn't punish me. Ji Tianqing revealed a stunned expression. He only felt that it was incomprehensible and unbelievable. Even if he did not take the initiative to take action and cause the deaths of billions of living beings, he was still passively involved and indirectly created this calamity. The heavenly Tao actually did not punish him for such a huge karma. This did not make sense. It was fine if it did not punish him, but Tao Xingyun was the real culprit, a person who had committed the most heinous crimes, but the heavenly Tao actually did not punish him. What kind of logic was this? Chapter 40-47. Ji Tianqing felt that it was inconceivable and unreasonable. However, he definitely could not reason with the heavenly Tao, nor could he. The will of the heavenly Tao was so mysterious and hard to fathom. Ji Tianqing stood in the void for a moment and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the void was completely quiet and that the heavenly Tao had no intention of getting angry again. It looks like the heavenly Tao will not punish me and Tao Xingyun. Why is that so? What are the criteria and basis for the judgment of the heavenly punishment? Ji Tianqing frowned and pondered, but he could not figure out this question. Thus, he took out the god-slaying battleship and drove it into the depths of the void, planning to slowly think along the way. The heavenly policy star was still in turmoil and would take a long time to truly calm down. However, all of this had nothing to do with Ji Tianqing. He still had many things to deal with. Not only did he have to count the spoils of war, but he also had to refine the godhead fragments of the many god kings and absorb the memories of the heavenly policy region lord's divine soul. The god-slaying battleship flew at a moderate speed in the void. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the cockpit, looking like he was resting with his eyes closed. As he controlled the god-slaying battleship, he took a king-level divine pill to recover his divine power. Previously, when he fought with Tao Xingyun and a few hundred god kings, he did not seem to be affected, but in fact, he had expended a lot of energy in energy. Now, he could finally calm down and properly recuperate. Time passed quietly. 2 days later, Ji Tianqing took a divine pill and circulated his energy to recuperate. His mental state was obviously much better. At this time, he had also guessed the reason and answer after much thinking and deduction. Above the God-King realm, the so-called last step is to grasp the power of the heavenly Tao and interfere with the rules of the heavenly Tao. In that case, people like Tao Xingyun and the other 4 God Emperors are all top experts who can influence the will of the heavenly Tao. Thus, they can avoid the punishment of the heavenly Tao and not be punished by the heavens. However, I have not grasped the power of the heavenly Tao, nor have I reached the God Emperor realm. How can I be like them and avoid the punishment of the heavenly Tao? In the past, everyone and I performed meritorious deeds of saving the world. They were all rewarded by the heavenly Tao and obtained the power of merit, but I didn't. Now, it seems that the heavenly Tao will neither reward me nor punish me. It should have completely ignored me. Or perhaps I used the heaven punishment array to come back from the dead and jumped out of the scope of the heavenly Tao's rules. Even though Ji Tianqing's tone was probing and uncertain, he didn't seem to be sure. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that this answer was closest to the truth. Of course, whether this was the truth or not, at least he had proven one thing. The heavenly Tao would not reward him, but it would not restrict or punish him either. This made him feel even more confident and at ease. He gradually put aside this question, no longer thinking about it and feeling distressed. He began to sort out the spoils of war he had obtained from this battle. Firstly, there was the silver dragon divine spear and a spatial ring left behind after Tao Xingyun's avatar was destroyed. The silver dragon divine spear was a supreme-grade king-level divine artifact, and it was personally refined by Tao Xingyun. There was no doubt about it. Ji Tianqing used the power of the 9 heavens divine cauldron and the divine hammer to forcefully erase the imprint and soul aura on the silver dragon divine spear, completely severing its relationship with Tao Xingyun and becoming an ownerless treasure. Then, he entered the distorted spacetime and gave this supreme-grade king-level divine spear to Ji Ku. Ku, you've always used the divine spear as a weapon, so you can unleash greater combat strength. The divine spear I refined for you previously was only a medium-grade king-level divine artifact, so it will limit your combat strength in the future. This silver dragon divine spear is for you. It's enough for you to use forever. Refine it well. Ji Ku was naturally pleasantly surprised and excited. She wanted to decline, but she knew that Ji Tianqing was sincerely giving it to her, and no one was more suitable than her for this divine spear, so she accepted it. Ji Tianqing left the distorted spacetime and went to check the interspatial ring of Tao Xingyun's incarnation. The interspatial ring worn by the incarnation was far inferior to that of Tao Xingyun's original body. The resources and wealth stored in it were also incomparable. Even so, Ji Tianqing found 2 trillion worth of cultivation resources from the interspatial ring. There were also dozens of medium-grade and high-grade king-level divine artifacts, thousands of king-level divine pills, and some strange divine items. Ji Tianqing put all these cultivation resources and divine artifacts into his own interspatial ring and put them away in different categories. They might be of use in the future. Then, he continued to check the interspatial rings of the Heavenly Strategy Region Master and the 300 or so foreign race divine kings. In comparison, these interspatial rings were even poorer and shabbier. They could not be compared to Tao Xingyun's interspatial ring. Other than the interspatial ring of the Heavenly Strategy Region Master, there were also cultivation resources worth a few trillion, as well as a batch of priceless divine artifacts and pills. In the interspatial rings of the few hundred foreign race divine kings, there were usually only tens or hundreds of billions worth of resources. However, wealth had always been something that could be accumulated from small amounts to a large amount. In the interspatial ring of a foreign race divine king, there were only a few hundred billion worth of resources. The amount of resources and wealth accumulated in the 300 or so interspatial rings was very shocking. Ji Tianqing made a rough estimate. A conservative estimate would be around 200 trillion, which would be 200 trillion after conversion. Originally, he had planned to pick out some king-level resources and divine artifacts and leave them in his interspatial ring. The rest would be absorbed by the 5 elements world. However, the five elements world had already benefited greatly. The divine power storm was still ongoing. Even if he invested 200 trillion worth of resources, it would only be icing on the cake. Therefore, Ji Tianqing stored these cultivation resources in his interspatial ring first. He would distribute them later. It was worth mentioning that he only had one interspatial ring in the past. Ever since he saved more than 10 stars and picked up a large number of star fragments and crystals, the interspatial ring was almost full. Now that he had obtained so many resources, he could only refine a high-grade king-level interspatial ring to store resources and treasures. Therefore, he wore the interspatial ring on both his index fingers. Fortunately, these two interspatial rings were as black as ink. They were simple and unadorned. They did not look funny. It was already 3 days later when he finished counting the spoils of war. At this time, the god-slaying battleship flew past a waste star. Therefore, Ji Tianqing piloted the god-slaying battleship and landed on the waste star. He hid in a remote area of the waste star and took out the Jyotian 10 Absolutes pagoda. He entered the distorted spacetime to refine the quintessence fragments. After the battle on the heavenly strategy planet, he had accumulated 400 quintessence fragments of divine kings. The first thing he wanted to refine was naturally the quintessence fragment of the heavenly strategy region master. Not only was the heavenly strategy region master the strongest, but he also wanted to extract the memories of the heavenly strategy region master to investigate clues related to the heaven-sealing dragon emperor. Chapter 40-48. In the distorted spacetime, under the blood flame sacred tree. Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged, circulating his energy to refine the quintessence fragment of the heavenly strategy region master. Not far from him, Yun Yao, Ji Ku, Ji Wushuang, and Ji Wuhan were circulating their energy to heal their injuries and cultivate. On the other platforms under the sacred tree, Chao Qingyu, Yank, and the others were circulating their energy to heal their injuries. Those who had participated in the battle on the heavenly strategy star were all severely injured. Fortunately, the sword of burial of heaven and Ji Ku had protected them and prevented them from dying at the critical moment. Although their injuries were quite serious and required a long time to heal, it would take them a few decades to 100 years. However, after experiencing that battle, they had gained a lot of combat experience and their foundation of the divine Tao was more stable. Every expert had to go through the tempering of blood and fire before they could truly grow. They had the most suitable cultivation illusory realms and the most abundant cultivation resources. They also had many companions to discuss and verify their cultivation path. They even had a top expert like Ji Tianqing to protect them. In addition, they had been tempered by the battles of the God Kings. Under such circumstances, how could they not work hard and improve their strength rapidly? Unknowingly, the god-slaying battleship had sailed in the void for an entire day. 50 days had passed in the distorted spacetime. Ji Tianqing had already refined the quintessence fragment of the heavenly strategy region master and absorbed his memories. After sorting out the heavenly strategy region master's memories, he obtained the information he wanted. However, he felt a little regretful that the heavenly strategy region master had never heard of or seen the heavenly strategy dragon emperor. In the past 1,000 years, a few major events had happened in the heavenly strategy star region, and they were all related to peak god kings. However, none of them were related to the heavenly strategy dragon emperor. In short, the disappearance and death of the heavenly strategy star region definitely had nothing to do with the heavenly strategy star region. In addition to this information, Ji Tianqing also learned many secrets about the heavenly strategy star region in Dao Xingyun. For example, how did Dao Xingyun subdue the heavenly policy domain lord and support him to firmly control the entire starfield? Another example was the situation of the many stars in the heavenly strategy star field, and how the non-human beings in the entire star field worked and pledged their loyalty to Dao Xingyun. As for Dao Xingyun, the mystery of the Grey Mist, and the other 4 god emperors, the heavenly strategy region master's status was too low to know. After refining the heavenly strategy domain Lord's Godhead fragment, Ji Tianqing temporarily stopped cultivating. He had to carefully consider this issue and make a decision as soon as possible. The 5 God Emperors all know that I have been reborn and have regained the strength of a peak God King. They also know my path forward. Therefore, Dao Xingyun had set up an ambush in the heavenly policy star field a few months in advance. The other God Emperors would definitely be prepared for the next few star fields. They would definitely not sit still and wait for death. Most likely, like Dao Xingyun, they would gather hundreds of God Kings in advance and set up an ambush, waiting for me to step into the trap. In the near future, Ji Tianqing's strength did not increase or break through significantly. If another battle similar to the battle on the heavenly policy star occurred, he would still not be able to defeat his opponent alone. He would still need the help of Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others. As for Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others, they were still in a severely injured state and were still recuperating in the distorted spacetime. Ji Tianqing knew that now was not the time to head to the next star field. If he rushed there rashly, he would most likely have to fight alone, and his life would be in great danger. After all, the God Emperors were not weak. They all had powerful strength and methods. Even if he could deal with one God Emperor's clone, he would not be able to deal with hundreds of God Kings. Even if Yun Yao, Ji Ku, and the others recovered from their injuries and assisted him in the battle, the other God Emperors might very well join forces to set up an ambush. If 2 God Emperors' clones joined forces and hundreds of God Kings from other races helped, there was a high chance that he, Yun Yao, and the others would be killed. With this in mind, Ji Tianqing decided to temporarily avoid the brunt of the attack and plan for the long term. He wanted to bring everyone to a safe place where they could recuperate and improve their strength in peace. When everyone was fully prepared, he would act according to the circumstances. At first, Ji Tianqing wanted to leave the heavenly policy star field and find a place to hide in the vast void. However, when he looked into the dark and cold void, he suddenly saw a bright golden sun in the depths of the distant void. It was an incomparably huge golden star. It floated alone in the void, emitting an endless sacred golden light that illuminated the various star fields. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment before he reacted and recognized that golden star. He immediately revealed a look of relief, and a smile appeared on his face. That's one of the eternal stars, the divine realm. Back then, when he set off from the dragon realm, he crossed the void and crossed one star field after another. When he was about to reach the heavenly policy star field, he was already more than halfway there. The heavenly policy star field and the heavenly leader star field were very close to the divine realm. He already knew this when he was still a Kenshin. However, he had always been thinking about exploring the 9 star fields and finding the mystery of his master's death, so he did not pay attention to the divine realm. Now that he saw the divine realm again, he immediately had an idea. Why should he find a place to recuperate in the void? If he returned directly to the divine realm, not only would he be able to recuperate in peace, but he would also be able to deal with many matters. For example, he could destroy the foundations of the 5 God Emperors' forces and gather the old subordinates and remaining forces. The 5 God Emperors' bases were in the divine realm, and they each controlled 5 continents. They also left many trusted experts to help them guard their bases. However, the 5 God Emperors' true bodies were deep in the void, studying the mystery of the grey fog. Their clones must be lying in ambush in the heavenly crane, heavenly phoenix, and other star fields, waiting for Ji Tianqing to walk right into their trap. As such, the divine realm was naturally empty. At the very least, the God Kings and Peak God Kings guarding the divine realm would definitely not be able to withstand Ji Tianqing's attacks. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing left the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower and appeared in the cockpit of the God-slaying battleship. He sat cross-legged on the disc array and controlled the God-slaying battleship to change direction and fly toward the divine realm. At the same time, he took out a large number of divine pills and elixirs to heal his injuries and cultivate. Although the divine realm could be seen clearly from the heavenly policy star field, it seemed as if the distance between the two was not far. In reality, the distance between the two was more than 100 billion miles. Even with the god-slaying battleship speed, it took half a year to reach the vicinity of the divine realm. Only when he was close could he feel the majesty and vastness of this eternal star. This eternal star with a diameter of 10 billion miles was completely enveloped by a golden barrier. It was the strongest spatial barrier in the world. No matter how terrifying the meteorites were, they would not be able to destroy its protective layer. Unless the heavenly Tao collapsed or an extraordinary power destroyed it, this star would be eternal and indestructible. Ji Tianqing was filled with anticipation and hope as he drove the god-slaying battleship straight toward the divine realm's golden barrier. Divine realm, I'm back. When I left the divine realm, I was chased by many god kings and was forced to flee to the dragon realm. This time, not only will I avenge my past humiliation, but I will also turn the divine realm upside down. Chapter 40-49. Swoosh! The god-slaying battleship passed through the golden light barrier and entered the god realm. Amidst the flickering light, the god-slaying battleship entered the god realm. The blue sky and clear water appeared in front of Ji Tianqing. Although he did not know which continent was in front of him for the time being. But after more than 20 years, seeing the scenery of the god realm again, he still felt somewhat emotional. In his previous life and this life, after the experience of 2 lifetimes, he had been calm and peaceful in the dragon realm, and it was smooth sailing. Only in the god realm did he experience so many ups and downs. And this time when he returned to the god realm, he would never be like before, and he would not let the tragedy repeat itself. He never forgot that when he fled the boundless heaven continent back then, those ancient clans that secretly helped him were still waiting for his triumphant return. The Jiang clan that would never be an ungrateful person. The war god clan that was hot-blooded and forthright, waiting for him to spar and fight. And the Lan clan that had deep brotherly love. And the 100 Refinement ancient sect that was waiting to exchange the 100 Refinement divine hammer blueprint with him. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing was full of confidence and anticipation as he steered the god-slaying battleship across the sky, heading straight ahead. There were endless mountain ranges all around, covered with lush forests. One could clearly hear the sounds of many birds and beasts. The god-slaying battleship turned into a stream of light, flying across the sky with lightning speed, 10,000 miles in an instant. An hour later, the god-slaying battleship flew out of the vast mountain range and forest, and finally saw a certain city of the god race nation. Ji Tianqing kept the battleship and entered the city alone, asking around for information. After asking around, he found out that this was Surging Sun City, the territory of True Sun Divine Nation and Qianfeng Empire, belonging to the Maple Water region, the territory of the Boundless Heaven continent. This answer made Ji Tianqing even more emotional, revealing a trace of a complicated smile. When I ascended to the God realm back then, I appeared in the Boundless Heaven continent. After so many years, I returned to the God realm again, and it's actually the Boundless Heaven continent again. Fate is really strange. He could only think that perhaps this coincidence was the will of the heavens. Since he landed in the Boundless Heaven continent, then he would pick up his old path and sweep through the entire God realm from the Boundless Heaven continent. Of course, he was not in a hurry to destroy the forces of the 5 God Emperors. Ji Tianqing needed to find a safe place to recuperate and cultivate in seclusion for a period of time. It just so happened that the Maple Water region he was in was located in the center of the Boundless Heaven continent. Ancient clans from several grotto heavens in the surrounding regions had helped him when he escaped from the Boundless Heaven continent. As for the reason, it was naturally because he had shown great kindness to those ancient clans in the past. Ji Tianqing steered the god-slaying battleship and flew east for half a day. He left the Maple Water territory and entered the Raging Flame territory. It took him a while to find Yen Su's paradise. This cave was located in the center of the Raging Flame territory. It was hidden deep inside a primitive forest and a mountain range. Almost no one had ever set foot here. The entrance to the grotto heaven was invisible and sealed. Without the guidance of the people from Yenshu's grotto heaven, no one from the outside would be able to find it. Ji Tianqing also spent some effort to find this place. After all, he had been to Yenshu's cave before and stayed there for about half a month. The ancient clan that occupied Yenshu's cave was called the Nangong clan. It was an ancient clan that had inherited the legacy of the ancient times. More than 1,000 years ago, Kenshin was asked by a friend to come to Yenshu's cave to help the Nangong clan. At that time, the Nangong clan was in trouble but they were unable to solve it. Kenshin's arrival gave some of the clansmen hope. However, there was another half of the clansmen who did not have confidence in him and treated him as a swindler. There was even a part of the clansmen who wanted to banish him from Yenshu's cave. Kenshin used his own methods and abilities to convince those who opposed him, ostracized him and wanted to banish him. Then, he used his superior wisdom and methods to solve the crisis of the Nangong clan and help the Nangong clan to overcome the crisis. At that time, the entire Nangong clan was shocked. Half of the boundless heaven continent knew about the news and felt it was unbelievable. From then on, the Nangong clan had formed a deep friendship with him. The clan leader of the Nangong clan even deliberately tested Kenshin and wanted to marry his daughter to Kenshin, even as a concubine. In this way, not only could he thank Kenshin for saving his life, but he could also deepen his relationship with Kenshin. After all, the daughter of the clan leader of the Nangong clan had also developed feelings for Kenshin after a few days of contact. However, Kenshin rejected the Nangong clan's good intentions. After staying in Yenshu's cave for more than 10 days, he left. Previously, Ji Tianqing was chased by the experts under the Azura God Emperor in the boundless heaven continent. He thought that he would not be able to escape. He did not expect that at the last moment, there were many ancient clans that secretly helped him. The Nangong clan of Yenshu's cave was among them. At that time, Ji Tianqing was also surprised. He did not expect the Nangong clan to still remember the kindness of the past. This time, when he returned to the boundless heaven continent, he chose to go to Yenshu's cave for two reasons. Firstly, Yenshu's cave was the closest. Secondly, he trusted the Nangong clan. The entrance of Yenshu's cave was protected by a king-level divine formation. It was in an invisible state. Dozens of God Lord Realm guards, led by 2 God King experts, guarded the entrance firmly. Ji Tianqing landed in the sky above a large canyon. He waved his palm and shot out a few divine golden lights, which landed in the canyon. Bam bam bam. Following a few muffled sounds, the canyon lit up with a dazzling divine power radiance. A formation plate with a radius of 10 miles appeared. On the colorful formation plate, there were hundreds of millions of formation veins and dozens of guards. In the middle of the formation plate, there was a blazing white light door that was 100 feet tall. It was in a closed state. Originally, the dozens of guards and the 2 commanders were resting. Suddenly being attacked, the formation was activated. Everyone was startled awake and subconsciously gripped their divine weapons tightly. Everyone's gaze gathered on Ji Tianqing, who was in midair. Ji Tianqing did not dodge either. He showed himself openly and flew toward the 5-colored formation plate. When he arrived at the edge of the formation plate, the 2 God King Realm Guard commanders shouted in unison, "Who are you? Why are you trespassing into Yenshu's cave?" For the past few hundred years, Yenshu's cave had been in a closed state. The disciples of the Nangong clan would not come out if they did not encounter any major issues. This was the order of the Nangong clan head. It was also some kind of wisdom. Currently, it was to avoid disaster. Because the Nangong clan had spent decades of effort to divine and deduce a trace of heaven's secret. He had a premonition that the boundless heaven continent would have a huge turmoil. Because of this, no one would come to Yenshu's cave for decades. Suddenly, a white-robed youth appeared. Without saying a word, he directly cast a spell to activate the defensive formation. The guards were of course alert and full of vigilance. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing appeared very magnanimous and did not have any sneaky appearance. He looked at everyone with a calm expression and reported his name and purpose of coming. When the two guard commanders heard, they were immediately stunned. Chapter 40-50. Kenshin's name reverberated like thunder in one's ears. As the publicly acknowledged #1 expert in the divine world and the youngest peak divine king, his life could be said to be legendary. It was no exaggeration to say that thousands of years ago, many cultivators and deities idolized him and imitated him. Almost 70 to 80% of the cultivators who were born 1,000 years ago had heard of his name and knew of his deeds. Even ordinary people were like this, let alone the Nangong clan who had received his favor and even seen his true appearance. It was not hard to imagine how the dozens of guards and the two guard commanders would feel and react when they heard that the sword god Long Tian was here to visit the Nangong family's patriarch. Everyone was stunned on the spot and looked at Ji Tianqing with their mouths agape. They only reacted after a few seconds of hesitation. You just said. You are Kenshin. The red-haired middle-aged guard commander on the left asked with a stutter. Are you really Kenshin? The guard commander on the right with black wings was emotional as he stared at Ji Tianqing with his bright eyes. The dozens of guards were even more so. All of them widened their eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing with bated breath. That blazing gaze was like that of a fanatic worshipper who had seen his idol. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths as they waited for Ji Tianqing's reply. They were afraid that he would deny it or say no. Although it was hard for everyone to believe that Kenshin, who was equivalent to a legend, would suddenly visit Yanshu Grotto Heaven. However, everyone was looking forward to it, afraid that it was a misunderstanding or a farce. The two guard commanders had a serious expression as they reminded Ji Tianqing in a serious tone, "You should know that Kenshin is now a wanted criminal in the boundless heaven continent, a criminal with a huge reward. If you impersonate him, don't blame us for capturing you and handing you over to the territorial master." Obviously, the two guard commanders were not blinded by the surprise and did not want this to turn into a farce. Under everyone's gaze, Ji Tianqing nodded calmly and said, "I am Kenshin Long Tian, the real deal. Quickly report to your clan master." After receiving his affirmative answer and seeing his calm expression, unfathomable aura, and smooth aura, many of the guards instantly believed half of it. In their hearts and fantasies, a peerless genius and expert should have such a bearing and demeanor. Therefore, one guard commander nodded and said, "Please wait for a moment, we will report to our clan master now." After he finished speaking, the guard commander took out a communication jade slip and reported the news to the Nangong clan patriarch. Of course, he repeated Ji Tianqing's description and words to the clan master. After the announcement, everyone fell silent. What followed next was a quiet wait. Although many of the guards were excited, many of them were looking at Ji Tianqing curiously, whispering to each other in secret. However, before confirming Ji Tianqing's identity, no one came up to him or tried to curry favor with him. Even if these people worshipped Kenshin, the Kenshin was a legend from 1,000 years ago. He had disappeared without a trace in the last 1,000 years. Even if the Kenshin's name had spread across the boundless heaven continent a few decades ago, it was still news of him being surrounded by many experts and forced to flee in all directions. Most importantly, the boundless heaven continent was now under the control of Emperor Shura. The experts under Emperor Shura's command viewed Kenshin as the #1 criminal. These guards did not dare show too much affection and worship, lest they cause trouble for the Nangong clan. After all, the Nangong clan had closed their paradise and not left it or entered the world for more than 200 years in order to hide from disaster. Since no one took the initiative to speak, Ji Tianqing also remained silent and waited quietly. Normally, the Nangong clan patriarch should have replied in half an hour. But after waiting for half an hour, there was still no news from the Nangong clan patriarch. There was no movement at all. Therefore, Ji Tianqing frowned in puzzlement. The two guard commanders and the many guards also began to mutter in their hearts. They began to make guesses and discuss through sound transmission. What's going on? Why is there no news from the patriarch even now? Yeah. The patriarch achieved great success half a month ago and came out of seclusion not long ago. He can't be cultivating in seclusion again, can he? Could this Kenshin be a fake? The patriarch knows that something is wrong and is gathering the experts of the clan. It's very likely. I think the patriarch is gathering the elders to discuss countermeasures. If this Kenshin is a fake, should we make a move and capture him first? Don't be rash. Even if he's a fake Kenshin, he's still a real God King expert. If we act rashly, we won't have the advantage. Right, you calm down, better wait for the patriarch's orders. The many guards discussed through sound transmission in secret. Their gazes when looking at Ji Tianqing also gradually became vigilance and suspicion. Right at this time, the white light door that had been closed all along suddenly opened from the inside. Swoosh! Amidst the flickering white light, a middle-aged divine race man who was over 10 feet tall and had a stalwart build stepped out of the light door. This person was dressed in a blue brocade robe and wore a luxurious crown on his head. His entire body emitted the dignified aura of a superior. His face was dignified, square face, wide nose, and a wisp of beard on his lower jaw. His thick brows and big eyes looked rather refreshing. When the guards around the white light door saw this middle-aged man appear, they all bowed and saluted in unison, saying in unison, "Greetings to the patriarch." Without a doubt, this majestic blue-robed man with a majestic gait was precisely the Nangong clan's patriarch. He ignored the surrounding guards. After stepping out of the light door, his gaze landed on Ji Tianqing, sizing him up carefully. When he saw Ji Tianqing's appearance clearly and sensed Ji Tianqing's aura, he immediately revealed a joyful smile. However, before he could greet Ji Tianqing, those guards still maintained their saluting posture. At this time, the light door flickered with white light again and several figures appeared. One after another, middle-aged and elderly divine race men dressed in brocade robes with dignified and graceful appearances appeared on the disc array one after another. When the guards saw these God King experts, they still maintained their saluting posture and shouted in unison, "Greetings to the elders." Clearly, those 7 middle-aged and elderly God Kings were the Nangong clan's elders. No one would have thought that the Nangong clan's patriarch did not reply for so long, not because he suspected that Kenshin was an impostor. Instead, he had gathered the elders and personally came to the Grotto Heaven's entrance to welcome Kenshin. Understanding this point, the blood of the guards boiled with excitement. Their emotions were agitated to the extreme. All of their guesses and suspicions vanished into thin air at this moment. Everyone's eyes when looking at Ji Tianqing recovered their passion and adoration. At the same time, the Nangong clan's patriarch suppressed his agitated emotions and quickly walked in front of Ji Tianqing. He cupped his hands and saluted him. "Kenshin, long time no see. We've finally waited for your return." Chapter 40-51. More than 1,000 years ago, news of Kenshin's death spread throughout the god world. Many factions, including the Nangong clan, as well as Kenshin's admirers, were shocked, incredulous, and regretful. But that was all. After all, ancient clans like the Nangong clan had only received his favor and were not his relatives. But in these 1,000 years, the 5 god emperors ruled the 5 continents of the god world and enslaved hundreds of millions of people. Almost all of the general public and common people lived in an abyss of suffering, restricted in every way, and extremely difficult. This was especially so for the various ancient clans. They had once been high and mighty rulers of all living things, but now they were reduced to obscure supporting roles. They could only live in seclusion and avoid the world. Their hearts were filled with anger and unwillingness, but there was nothing they could do. Many ancient clans had thought of rebelling and overthrowing the dark rule of the 5 god emperors. But they did not have the guts, much less the strength. If they acted rashly, they would definitely be destroyed by the 5 god emperors, and their fates would be tragic. Thus, they had been enduring silently, waiting for an opportunity. Until more than 20 years ago, news of Kenshin's rebirth and Kenshin's reappearance spread from the boundless heaven continent. Many ancient clans saw a glimmer of hope. Their spirits were lifted, and they were filled with hope and expectation. Thus, many ancient clans rushed to help Kenshin, hoping that Kenshin could escape the pursuit of many experts. Because they knew that Kenshin had a blood feud with the 5 god emperors and would fight the 5 god emperors to the death no matter what. Even if Kenshin was not strong enough and could not fight against the 5 god emperors. But as long as Kenshin lived, there was still hope. That secret rescue successfully helped Kenshin, allowing him to smoothly escape from the boundless heaven continent. While many ancient clans breathed a sigh of relief, they were also incomparably expectant and silently looking forward to Kenshin's early return. They were well aware that when Kenshin returned to the god world and the boundless heaven continent, it would be the beginning of revenge. Today, the Nangong family had received a report from a guard that Kenshin Ryushin had arrived. The moment he heard the news, the head of the Nangong family, who was meditating in the secret chamber, jumped up in excitement and couldn't help but wave his fist. Fortunately, he was the only one in the secret room, and no one saw him so agitated and lost his composure. Otherwise, the people of the Nangong clan would find it hard to believe that their family head, who had always been calm and composed, would have such a huge emotional fluctuation. Senior Nangong, how have you been? Looking at the smiling Nangong family head, Ji Tianqing also cupped his fists and returned the greeting with a smile. After that, the 7 elders of the Nangong clan also lined up in a row. They were all emotional and had smiles on their faces as they saluted and greeted him. Kenshin, I haven't seen you in over 1,000 years, but you're even more impressive than before. Long Tian, you were once the #1 expert in the god realm, yet you met with such a tragic end. At that time, it could be said that the world was shaken, and millions of people cried for you. However, the heavens have eyes and have returned you to everyone, to the god realm. Kenshin, welcome back. Ha ha ha. Brother Kenshin, I haven't forgotten those 2 punches from back then. I still remember your teachings. When this world was shrouded in darkness, we, like many people, missed you. When everyone sank into darkness, numb and gave up on themselves, they saw light and hope, and that was you. The first few elders were still all right. They either saluted and greeted Ji Tianqing formally or tried to worm their way into being friends with him. The last elder to speak was the most emotional one. He was the youngest elder of the Nangong clan. He looked to be close to 40 years old, and deliberately kept a beard to pretend to be mature. His name was Nangong Ao. This guy's name was Ao, but his words and actions were not cold and arrogant at all. Instead, they were a little jumpy. Sometimes funny, sometimes deep, sometimes emotional, sometimes childish, sometimes exaggerated. In any case, his mental state wasn't normal. After he finished speaking, he even revealed an expression of admiration and opened his arms to give Ji Tianqing a hug. That expression and posture was as if he was embracing the sun and welcoming the light. Ji Tianqing could not help but laugh. He pointed at him and shook his head. He laughed and said, "You little brat, I haven't seen you for more than 1,000 years, and you're still so naughty. You're an elder now, you have to pay attention to your image." The elders nodded in agreement. One of them, an old man with a white beard, felt the same way. He quickly complained, "Long Tian, this little monkey is really a headache. We can't control him, and he doesn't listen to the master's words. From what I see, when you stay in the Yenshu cave, let him accompany you. You have to educate him on our behalf. Don't cause trouble all day and disturb everyone's peace." The white-bearded elder's words made the master of the Nangong clan and the few elders laugh. Even the guards around the formation plate snickered. Nangong Ao did not feel ashamed or embarrassed at all. Instead, he looked at the crowd with sympathy. He sighed with a heavy face, "Sigh, you old-fashioned people are too boring. Staying in the Yenshu cave all day, looking at the same people, and not adding a new face for a few years, what's the point? Our clan only has tens of thousands of people, and I'm familiar with everyone. I even know how many leg hairs these guards have, don't you feel bored?" When he said this, everyone had a strange expression. The dozens of guards all shuddered and subconsciously clamped their legs together, feeling an inexplicable chill. There were some guards who could not help but look at their legs. There were even some guards who started to recall and ponder. When did Nangong Ao see their leg hairs? Seeing that the atmosphere was a little strange and the topic was being led astray, the master of the Nangong clan coughed twice and pretended to be angry. He reprimanded, "Nangong Ao, don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. All these years, you purposely caused trouble and made mistakes. You just want me to punish you, to let you leave the Yenshu cave and have fun outside." Humph. Not only did Nangong Ao not quibble, he quickly nodded and said flatteringly, "Master, you are indeed wise and wise. Since the patriarch is well aware of this, then I ask the patriarch to." Without waiting for him to finish, the master of the Nangong clan waved his hand playfully and said, "You wish. Now that Kenshin is here, you have to treat and accompany him well. Don't think about going anywhere." Nangong Ao showed a disappointed look. However, he changed his mind and had an idea. Hence, a smile returned to his face and he nodded. He said, "Yes, master. I will definitely complete the task." Looking at his expression, everyone present could guess that he must be planning something again. After a while, everyone finished their greetings. The master of the Nangong clan and a few elders escorted Ji Tianqing into the light door and entered the Yenshu cave. Before leaving, the master of the Nangong clan did not forget to order the guards to keep it a secret and not to leak any information. Otherwise, they would be severely punished. Chapter 40-52. The Nangong family head was not foolish. Since Kenshin came alone without any fanfare, there must be something going on. Moreover, they had to keep a low profile to prevent the news from being leaked. After all, Kenshin was still a wanted man. Once the news was leaked out, he would be besieged by a large group of experts. By then, not only would Yenshu's grotto heaven be surrounded, Kenshin's life would also be in danger. Keeping it a secret was of utmost importance. After entering Yenshu's grotto heaven, the group flew across the sky, across the mountains and rivers, towards the depths of the grotto heaven. Yenshu's grotto heaven was huge, with a radius of 800,000 miles. This grotto heaven, which could accommodate billions of living beings, only had about 10,000 people living in it. Almost 10,000 of them were the disciples and relatives of the Nangong family. The other few thousand were the servants and relatives of the Nangong family. Yenshu's grotto heaven was rich in divine power and resources, forming a world of its own. As long as the realm of gods was not destroyed, this grotto heaven, which was attached to the realm of gods, could exist forever. Even if the Nangong family lived in seclusion for hundreds of millions of years, it would not be a problem. The palaces of the Nangong family were built on the peak of the mountains in the depths of the grotto heaven. That was where the divine power was the most abundant. Ji Tianqing and the others flew across the sky unhurriedly, chatting about some casual topics along the way. Looking at the surrounding mountains and rivers, it was a beautiful scenery filled with spiritual energy. The atmosphere was even more joyous. After about 45 minutes, the group flew across hundreds of thousands of miles of mountains and rivers and arrived at the palaces in the depths of the grotto heaven. Even though they were still a few hundred miles away, they could see a stretch of towering mountains connected together. Each mountain peak was arranged in a picturesque manner. Ji Tianqing had been here before and stayed for half a month. Of course, he knew that there were 49 mountains. On each mountain peak, there were a few palaces and mansions. Altogether, there should be more than 200 palaces and more than 300 mansions. Looking from afar, the palaces and mansions were dazzling, exquisite and dignified. There were teams of guards in bright armor guarding the entrance of each palace, as well as the left and right sides of each main road. Yenshu's grotto heaven had been sealed for many years and no outsiders had entered. However, the Nangong clan would not give up on basic precautions. Ji Tianqing had thought that after the Nangong clan had sealed themselves off from the world and lived in seclusion for hundreds of years, their clansmen must have become lazy and slack off. Even if he entered the palaces, most of the Nangong clan members would be cultivating in seclusion. However, he didn't expect that when the Nangong family head and elders escorted him to the plaza of the main peak, a large group of Nangong family members appeared around him. "Welcome back, Lord Kenshin." At least 300 people from the Nangong clan, all wearing luxurious clothes and exquisite accessories, surrounded the square. They were all in high spirits, and their emotions were stirred up. Their faces were filled with joy as they looked at Ji Tianqing with sparkling eyes. The dozen or so young girls at the front of the crowd were holding many trays filled with divine fruits and wine cups filled with bejeweled nectar. The leader of the group was a young woman. She wore an aqua blue gauze dress. She had a noble and elegant temperament. Her expression and emotions seemed to be calmer, but her eyes were more complicated. Her eyes were as clear as a lake, and they contained an indescribable excitement and longing. She held a 5-colored haze cloak with embroidered dragon patterns in her hands. She looked at Ji Tianqing affectionately. It was obvious that when the Nangong family head brought the elders to the entrance of the cave to welcome Ji Tianqing, the news of Kenshin's return spread throughout the Yenshu cave. Those disciples who were cultivating in seclusion naturally didn't receive the news. They couldn't come out of seclusion in a short period of time. However, those disciples who weren't cultivating in seclusion, and were just cultivating normally, all moved out. The young disciples who admired and missed Kenshin even gathered at the main peak spontaneously and prepared this simple but passionate welcoming ceremony. As for the dozen or so young girls, the most elegant, dignified, noble and beautiful young woman was actually the one who was the most excited and the most surprised. It was just that she had great self-restraint and didn't lose her composure in front of everyone. Looking at the hundreds of Nangong family disciples who were cheering, Ji Tianqing felt a little emotional. He felt a tinge of warmth in his heart. Even if he had disappeared for more than 1,000 years, even if these young disciples didn't have a deep relationship with him. But after more than 1,000 years, these people could still remember him and treat him so warmly. He felt that he didn't waste his effort to help the Nangong family resolve the crisis. "Everyone, it's been 1,000 years. When we meet again, everyone is still in their prime. It's really delightful. Thank you for your warm welcome. Long Tian can't thank you enough." Ji Tianqing looked at the crowd with a face full of smiles. He clasped his fists and thanked them. The hundreds of young disciples became even more excited when they saw his reaction. They waved their hands and shouted. The Nangong family head and a few elders looked at this scene with a smile. They didn't stop them, nor did they rush them. Then, the young woman in the aqua blue gauze dress held the colorful haze and embroidered dragon cloak. She walked gracefully in front of Ji Tianqing. She had a faint smile on her face. Her red lips parted slightly. Her voice was calm and gentle as she said, "Long Tian, welcome back to the Yenshu cave. This cloak was embroidered by me back then. It's just that I didn't have the chance to give it to you. Now that you've returned safe and sound, please accept it." Although, she tried her best to maintain her composure and make her tone sound even calmer. But if one listened carefully, one would notice that her voice was trembling. This was naturally because she was too excited and surprised to see Long Tian again. Moreover, he was right in front of her. At this moment, there was only one thought in her mind. To be able to see Long Tian again in this life, the 1,000 years of waiting and longing was worth it. This was also God's favor to her, giving her another chance. After saying these words, she held the gorgeous, exquisite, and dreamlike cloak in both hands and handed it to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing looked at the beauty in front of him and was momentarily speechless. His heart was filled with mixed feelings, and he didn't know what to say. Of course, he knew that this woman was the princess of the Nangong family, the apple of the Nangong family head's eye, Nangong Nihuang. He also knew how much Nangong Nihuang admired and even worshipped him back then. And Nangong Nihuang's feelings for him were well known to the Nangong family. Back then, when he rejected that seemingly logical marriage, he thought that he had broken Nangong Nihuang's heart and made Nangong Nihuang feel very embarrassed. More than 1,000 years had passed, and Nangong Nihuang should have long forgotten about him. She shouldn't have any feelings for him to speak of. But he didn't expect that when they met again, Nangong Nihuang was no different from back then. Whether it was the way she looked at him, or the way she spoke, it was exactly the same as back then. As for Nangong Nihuang's thoughts and feelings, he was afraid that they were still unwavering. Chapter 40-53. Although Nangong Nihuang was a very outstanding woman and could be said to be one in a million. She was intelligent, kind, strong and independent, and had the strength of the 4th level of the Divine King realm. However, Ji Tianqing did not have any feelings for her and only saw her as a friend. Because of this, he had rejected the proposal of the Nangong family head back then. And now, Nangong Nihuang was giving away the cloak that she had spent many years refining and embroidering in front of everyone. Everyone was well aware of what this meant. Therefore, Ji Tianqing was a little hesitant. If he did not accept this gift, Nangong Nihuang would definitely be embarrassed in front of everyone and the Nangong family head would lose face. Even if no one would argue with Ji Tianqing, he did not want to hurt Nangong Nihuang like this. However, if he accepted this gift, he was worried that Nangong Nihuang and the others would misunderstand and cause more trouble and entanglement in the future. Just as Ji Tianqing was hesitating, Nangong Nihuang looked at him and secretly transmitted her voice, "Long Tian, you have already rejected me once back then. Are you going to reject me again today? Don't think too much and don't have any psychological burden. This is just a small token of my appreciation. Welcome to Yenshu Cave Heaven again. After all, we are still friends, aren't we?" Since Nangong Nihuang had said so, Ji Tianqing had no reason to reject her. He nodded to her and reached out to take the cloak. The hundreds of people around them were watching them. When Ji Tianqing hesitated, everyone was a little nervous and worried for Nangong Nihuang. When the crowd saw Ji Tianqing nodding and taking the cloak with a smile, everyone secretly heaved a sigh of relief and then burst into a burst of surprised cheers. It seemed to them that this meant that Kenshin had accepted Nangong Nihuang's feelings. Nangong Nihuang's unwavering feelings and thousands of years of waiting had finally been reciprocated. Everyone was gratified and happy for her. After all, these hundreds of people were the disciples of the Nangong family. They knew best how lonely and sad Nangong Nihuang had been for more than 1,000 years. After Ji Tianqing received the cloak, he did not wear it immediately. Instead, he stored it in his spatial ring. Nangong Nihuang's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment and regret, but she didn't show any unusual expression and still had a smile on her pretty face. In fact, for the past 1,000 years, she had fantasized countless times that one day Kenshin would come back from the dead and return to Yenshu's cave to look for her. The next time she saw Kenshin, she would definitely put this cloak on Kenshin with her own hands. That was a cloak that she had painstakingly weaved with 100 years of effort and countless precious materials. She believed that only a great, legendary genius like Kenshin was worthy of that cloak. When Kenshin put on that cloak, he would definitely be the most dazzling, most handsome man in the world. Unfortunately, her dream could not be realized for the time being. The crowd clamored in the square for a while. Then, Nangong family head, Nangong Nihuang, and several elders escorted Ji Tianqing into the main hall. The main hall was called the Great Light Hall. It was where the top guests were received and where important military matters were discussed. After the Nangong family closed the cave, the Great Light Hall had not been used for more than 200 years. And today, in order to welcome Ji Tianqing's arrival, the Nangong family head opened the Great Light Hall. There were already guards and maids who had tidied up the hall, making it clean and spotless. The dazzling Great Hall of Light was brightly lit, giving off a magnificent and majestic appearance. The Nangong family head sat at the head of the table, with Nangong Nihuang by his side. Ji Tianqing sat at the head of the table on the left, with Nangong Ao sitting next to him. The other elders sat on the right. After everyone was seated, there were young maids who served all kinds of divine fruits, divine tea, pastries, and wine. Both sides exchanged a few simple greetings before they got to the main topic. They talked about Ji Tianqing's intentions and plans. In order not to leak the secret, the Nangong family head dismissed all the guards and maids. He stared at Ji Tianqing, with a calm expression, and asked in a low voice, "Long Tian, why did you come to the Yenshu cave alone this time? Looking at your current aura and state, you are many times stronger than when you left the God world. You should have recovered to your peak state, right?" Nangong Nihuang and several elders stared at Ji Tianqing with expectant eyes. Everyone was guessing in their hearts that the sword god had most likely returned to his peak to take revenge. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and explained, "My strength has already recovered to the peak of the God King realm, and I have made a breakthrough compared to before. After returning to the God world, I plan to recuperate in the Yenshu cave for a few months. In the past few years, I have been traversing the void, searching for the major galaxies. To be honest, the major galaxies outside the God world are all under the control of the 5 God Emperors. The billions of creatures of different races in those star fields had all become the slaves of the 5 great God Emperors. They worked day and night for the 5 great God Emperors, collecting resources endlessly. Although I have not fought with the real bodies of the 5 God Emperors. When I passed by those galaxies, I killed the puppet masters set up by the 5 God Emperors, making it difficult for them to control those galaxies. In addition, there were a few avatars of the God Emperors who came to kill me, but I destroyed them all." Ji Tianqing roughly recounted what had happened in the past few years. When everyone heard this, they clicked their tongues in wonder. Their spirits were lifted, and they were filled with excitement and anticipation. Especially the elders, who exclaimed and whispered in each other's ears. "I see. No wonder the 5 God Emperors have not shown themselves in the God world for the past 1,000 years. The ambition of the 5 God Emperors is huge, and they are plotting far ahead. Fortunately, Kenshin did not fall, or else who could defeat the 5 God Emperors? I'm afraid that in the end, all living things in this world will be enslaved by the 5 God Emperors. Long Tian's strength is stronger than before. Is he going to surpass the Divine King realm and become the 6th God Emperor? What's so strange about that? If those 5 guys can become God Emperors, why can't Kenshin? I still believe that if there is a 6th God Emperor in this world, it will be Kenshin. Since Long Tian can destroy the avatars of the 5 God Emperors, that means his strength is not far from the God Emperor realm." Patriarch Nangong and the elders were excited, focusing on the difference in strength between Ji Tianqing and the 5 God Emperors. Only Nangong Nihuang's expression changed slightly, looking at Ji Tianqing worriedly, and asked, "Long Tian, are you injured? Is it serious?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand and smiled, "Don't worry, it's just a minor injury. I just used too much energy and need some time to recuperate." When I returned to the God world, the first thing I did was to come to Yenshu Grotto Heaven. First, to recuperate, second, to use this place as a base to plan an earth-shattering plan. Just as you guessed, I want to fulfill my promise. When I return to the God world, I want to change the world. Chapter 40-54. Those sitting in the Great Hall of Light were all smart people. Even though Ji Tianqing did not say it clearly, he only mentioned the earth-shattering plan and the change of the day. Everyone immediately understood what he meant. They were all excited and their eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. As for Nangong Nihuang, she was more attentive than the rest. After guessing Ji Tianqing's plan and purpose, she also noticed another detail. Ji Tianqing wanted to use the Yenshu cave as his base. Didn't this mean that he trusted the Nangong clan very much and had no doubts? Moreover, he would stay in the Yenshu cave for a long time and would not leave anytime soon. This was, of course, the best news for Nangong Nihuang. She looked around and saw that her father and a few elders had no objections. No one objected either. Therefore, she said to Ji Tianqing, thank you for trusting the Nangong clan. Don't worry, we will definitely support you and fully cooperate with you to carry out your plan. The Nangong clan master and a few elders reacted and quickly nodded in agreement. They all expressed their opinions. Long Tian, the Nangong clan will always be your ally and staunch supporter. We believe that you must be fully prepared for this decision. Since you trust the Nangong clan so much, how can we let you down? Long Tian, with your reputation, as long as you raise your arm and call for help, there will definitely be a swarm of followers. As for the change of the day, we have to seriously consider it and discuss it carefully. You should first recuperate from your injuries. Overall, everyone still agreed and supported what Ji Tianqing wanted to do. Especially the Nangong clan master's attitude, which determined the choice of the entire Nangong clan. Seeing that no one objected or dissuaded him, Ji Tianqing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, he was still worried that the Nangong clan had been suppressed for thousands of years and had long been disheartened and did not dare to resist. Now, it seemed that the Azura God Emperor's oppression of the Nangong clan for thousands of years did not make the Nangong clan yield. Instead, it aroused the Nangong clan's desire to resist. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. Everyone chatted with Ji Tianqing for more than an hour, asking him about his experiences over the years and the truth behind his fake death. No one was in a hurry to ask about the future plans to rebel against the Azura God Emperor. 2 hours later, everyone finished chatting. At this time, Nangong family had once again warned everyone not to leak the news of Kenshin's return. Patriarch Nangong originally wanted to personally arrange Ji Tianqing's residence, but Nangong Nihuang and Nangong Ao volunteered to be responsible for arranging Ji Tianqing's residence and daily life. The Nangong family patriarch and the other elders were happy to see this happen. They also knew that among the young disciples of the Nangong clan, only Nangong Ao and Nangong Nihuang were closest to Ji Tianqing. Thus, everyone stood up and bowed. Ji Tianqing took Nangong Ao and Nangong Nihuang away from the Light Palace. After leaving the Light Palace, the three walked side by side on the square. There were nearly 1,000 Nangong clansmen gathered around. When they saw Ji Tianqing come out, they all surrounded him, greeted him, and asked about his well-being to express their welcome. Seeing that everyone was so enthusiastic, if Ji Tianqing had to deal with them one by one, it would take him half a day. Nangong Ao and Nangong Nihuang hurriedly helped him out, and with a few words, they sent everyone away and made a path for him. The three quickly left and came to the back of the Light Palace. Nangong Nihuang originally wanted to arrange for Ji Tianqing to stay in the Star Origin Palace. This palace was magnificent enough and had always been used to entertain distinguished guests. Moreover, the Star Origin Palace was very close to the Light Palace, and not far from Nangong Nihuang's residence. There was only one palace in between. She even wanted to transfer the guards and maids in her palace to serve Ji Tianqing. But before Ji Tianqing could express his opinion, Nangong Ao waved his hand and vetoed this proposal. Nihuang. If it were any other distinguished guest, it would make sense for you to arrange for him to stay in the Star Origin Palace, but Long Tian is different. There are so many disciples of our Nangong clan who admire and worship him very much. Everyone can guess that he will most likely stay in the Star Origin Palace. At that time, there will be people going to the Star Origin Palace to visit him every day. Wouldn't that be very noisy? He can't refuse, he can't hurt everyone's enthusiasm and face. But this will disturb his recuperation. Nangong Nihuang also felt that what he said was reasonable, so she nodded and said, I didn't consider it carefully. Ninth Elder, where should we arrange for Long Tian? Nangong Ao revealed a playful smile, lowered his voice and said, I live on the Flying Cloud Peak, which is far away from the Light Palace. Usually, there are very few people who disturb me. Let Long Tian live on the Flying Cloud Peak. There happens to be an elegant and clean house there. I'll send someone to clean it up. As for the guards and maids, you can arrange for them. Nangong Nihuang thought that it made sense. The Ninth Elder was always causing trouble, and also liked to play tricks and bully the young disciples of the clan. Therefore, in the past few hundred years, very few people dared to go to the Flying Cloud Peak, for fear of encountering Nangong Ao. In addition, Nangong Nihuang could also see that Nangong Ao's arrangement was somewhat selfish. He could be closer to Long Tian. But this was understandable, Nangong Nihuang didn't mind. As long as no one disturbed Ji Tianqing and allowed him to recuperate in peace, it was fine. The two reached a consensus and rushed to the Flying Cloud Peak with Ji Tianqing. After arriving at the Flying Cloud Peak, Nangong Ao ordered more than 20 guards and maids in his palace to clean up the house. Nangong Nihuang sent out a message, summoning the guards and maids who served her to gather at the Flying Cloud Peak. In less than an hour, this matter was done. Next, Ji Tianqing lived in the house, and the 12 guards and 8 maids were arranged to perform their duties. Nangong Nihuang saw that things were arranged properly, and said to Ji Tianqing, Long Tian, rest for half a day. Tonight, Father will hold a grand banquet to welcome you. Our Yanshu cave has not held such a grand event for many years. You should prepare a little. This was what Ji Tianqing had expected, and was not surprised. He nodded to show that he understood. Nangong Nihuang left, and only Ji Tianqing and Nangong Ao were left in the study. It was not until then that Nangong Ao winked at him and said, Long Tian, Nihuang has left. Now can you tell me the real purpose of coming to the Yanshu cave? Ji Tianqing was speechless. He glanced at him and said, My purpose, just now in the Great Hall of Light, wasn't it very clear? Nangong Ao patted him on the shoulder, with a don't pretend posture, and said with a chuckle, Okay, between us brothers, you don't have to hide. Tell me, are you touched by Nihuang's deep friendship? Ever since the news of your death spread, for more than 1,000 years, she has been depressed and sad. Her feelings for you are stronger than gold, higher than the sky, and deeper than the sea. Everyone in our clan knows. Such an infatuated beauty, don't let her down. Chapter 40-55. Ji Tianqing found it difficult to withstand Nangong Ao's words, and he was unable to answer. He could not find any words to refute and could only frown in silence. It was impossible to accept. If he said that he had no feelings for Nangong Nihuang, it would be impossible to accept her feelings. It would make her feel awkward and hurt her heart and self-esteem. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was silent, Nangong Ao thought that he hadn't made up his mind yet, and was still hesitating in weighing the pros and cons. Therefore, he advised him sincerely, brother, only through experiencing life and death can you see who truly cares about you and who truly loves you. I advise you to reconsider this matter. Don't hurt her a second time. Seeing that Nangong Ao's misunderstanding was getting deeper, Ji Tianqing could only explain, of course I don't want to hurt Ni Huang, but I really can't accept her feelings. Actually, I didn't come to Yenshu Grotto Heaven alone this time. I brought my family and friends, I already have a wife and children. Nangong Ao, who was about to turn and leave, suddenly turned to look at him with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. You. When did you get married? You even have children. All along, Nangong Ao's impression and understanding of Kenshin was that he was a cold block of ice, an unromantic block of wood. It was as if Kenshin was obsessed with sword cultivation and had no interest in relationships. Even if Kenshin did not marry, Nangong Ao would not be surprised. But he did not expect that after not seeing him for more than 1,000 years, Kenshin's character had changed. Not only did he get married, he even had children. Nangong Ao's eyes widened and his face was filled with disbelief. He stared straight at Ji Tianqing, as if he wanted to see through him. Seeing that he did not believe him, Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Don't look at me like that, I'm telling the truth." Nangong Ao frowned and thought for a while. He said, "Words are not proof. When you let me see your wife and children, I will believe you." Ji Tianqing said, "They are in seclusion to cultivate and heal. You will see them in the future if you have the chance." Since that was the case, Nangong Ao had no choice but to accept this fact. He thought for a moment and was suddenly enlightened. He smiled and said, "In the past, you were as cold as an iceberg. I thought you would never marry and use your sword as your companion. Since you've already broken your vows, you don't mind marrying another one. As long as you accept Ni Huang, even if she can't be your wife, I believe she will be willing to be your concubine." Breaking the precepts. Ji Tianqing could only frown at this word, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. However, he didn't take it to heart and explained, "I already have 2 wives and a pair of children. We've gone through a lot of hardships and tribulations before our family can be reunited in harmony. I won't take any more concubines. That would hurt them and be unfair to them." This. Nangong Ao didn't quite agree with his idea. He smiled bitterly and said, "Why are you as stubborn as Ni Huang?" Ji Tianqing only smiled and did not explain further. "If you want to be Ni Huang's lobbyist, then forget it. If there's nothing else, then I'll prepare to go into seclusion to recuperate." Don't. Nangong Ao quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, "I'm just asking a few questions. I'm not here to be Ni Huang's lobbyist. I have something important to ask you. Aren't you going to overthrow the rule of the Azura God Emperor and take over the boundless heaven continent? For such an earth-shattering event, you must be well prepared. If we start after your seclusion, we'll have to waste a few months. Why don't you tell me now, what do you need me to do, or prepare and plan in advance?" Ji Tianqing glanced at him and said with a smile, "It seems like you can't stay idle for even a day in Yenshu's cave. Asking me for a job is also to go out and have fun as soon as possible, right?" He. Nangong Ao grinned, which was considered a tacit admission. Ji Tianqing thought for a while and said, "I'll be in seclusion for about 3 months. During this time, help me investigate the details of those territorial masters in the boundless heaven continent. And those above the territorial masters, the divine king powerhouses left behind by the Azura God Emperor. You have to make a list, the more detailed the better." Nangong Ao's eyes suddenly lit up. He rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "A death list? He. This mission is very exciting, I like it. Don't worry, I'll do my best to make this list as soon as possible." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "All right, then do it as soon as possible." Nangong Ao thought for a while and asked again, "I'm afraid it's impossible to overthrow the rule of the Azura God Emperor with just you and the power of our Nangong clan. There are still many ancient clans that are willing to listen and follow you. You have to contact them in advance, right? Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said, "Of course I have to do this, but not now, and I won't let you do it." Nangong Ao spread his hands and shrugged, "All right, my reputation and status are indeed not qualified. All right, you can go into seclusion without worry. I'll go find the master now and ask him to let me go out to carry out the mission." Seeing him turn and leave excitedly, Ji Tianqing quickly reminded him, the powerhouses under the Azura God Emperor might have received some news. "So, you have to be careful when carrying out the mission." "Be careful." "Understood." Nangong Ao waved his hand and left the study room without looking back. Seeing his back disappear outside the garden, Ji Tianqing then retracted his gaze. After a while, he entered the secret chamber hidden deep underground and prepared to cultivate in seclusion. Swoosh! After entering the secret chamber, he took out the Jiutian Shizhu Tower and entered the distorted space. The reason why he came to Yenshu Cave and decided to cultivate in seclusion for a few months was not to heal his injuries. In fact, his injuries were not serious. He had used up too much energy and was slowly recovering. It did not affect his combat power. The reason why he cultivated in seclusion for a few months was because, the great battle on the Tian Su Star had benefited him greatly, and his realm had increased again. Now, he was very close to becoming a peak divine king. He wanted to cultivate in seclusion for a period of time before the shocking plan started. He wanted to break through to the peak divine king realm. Under the bloody flame sacred tree, Ji Tianqing scanned the surroundings with his divine consciousness and checked on everyone's condition. It was quiet under the tree. Everyone was sitting on the platform, focused on healing their injuries and cultivating in seclusion. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at the humongous bloody flame sacred tree. His eyes flashed with admiration and relief. In the battle on the Tian Su Star, hundreds of divine king powerhouses and countless Sir God powerhouses were killed. Naturally, the blood essence of those powerhouses were devoured by the bloody flame sacred tree. That battle was the one in which the bloody flame sacred tree had devoured the most energy in its history. Many years ago, it had already grown into an upper king sacred tree. And the battle on the Tian Su Star had allowed it to break through again. It was in the process of becoming a supreme king sacred tree. Now, the entire crown of the bloody flame sacred tree was surging with bloody flame and purple flame. Ji Tianqing believed that in a few years, it would become a supreme king sacred tree. At that time, this divine tree would become the fifth supreme grade divine item he possessed. Chapter 40-56. Even the Shuayan sacred tree was evolving and becoming stronger. How could Ji Tianqing stop his footsteps? Soon, he collected his thoughts and began to cultivate. Next, he planned to use 10 years to refine the 400 pieces of divine personas of the foreign tribes' divine kings. Even though the foreign tribes' divine kings were relatively weak, with only a few of them being upper divine kings and most of them being middle divine kings. But they had the advantage in numbers. Ji Tianqing believed that these 400 pieces of divine personas would be a great help to him in breaking through to the peak divine king realm. Swoosh! He held the 2 pieces of divine personas in both hands and used the engulfing divine power to refine them. It was quiet under the sacred tree. Only rays of divine light shone silently. As time passed, the power of the 2 pieces of divine personas turned into 5 colored streams and entered Ji Tianqing's body continuously. His power was slowly and weakly increasing, but his foundation was still very solid. Ji Tianqing was cultivating in seclusion in the distorted spacetime and was not affected or disturbed at all. In the next few days, the Yenshu Grotto heaven was in a state of excitement and excitement. More and more disciples of the Nangong clan knew that Kenshin had returned and was recuperating in the Yenshu Grotto heaven. It was even to the extent that those young disciples who had seen Ji Tianqing with their own eyes were filled with pride and complacency. The sword god they saw was extremely handsome, mighty, and elegant. This caused those Nangong clan members who did not see Ji Tianqing to gather in groups of 3 to 5 and rush to the main peak. They gathered outside the Xinyuan palace and looked in anticipation, hoping to see the legendary Kenshin. Some of the women and older Nangong clan members could still suppress their excitement and waited outside the palace. However, some of the young disciples who were excited and hot-blooded did not have the patience to wait. When someone took the lead to break into the Xinyuan palace, more people followed suit and followed. Therefore, more than 2,000 Nangong clan members entered the Xinyuan palace and expressed their desire to visit Kenshin. Their main purpose was to witness Kenshin's glory with their own eyes. There were only a little more than 20 guards stationed in the Star Origin Palace. How could they stop more than 2,000 clansmen? Not to mention, the 2,000+ people were all hot-blooded and emotional. They didn't listen to their advice at all. Even if they repeatedly stated that Kenshin was not in the Star Origin Palace, no one believed them. More than 2,000 people clamored and surrounded the Star Origin Palace. The scene was a little awkward and out of control. At the critical moment, Nangong Nihuang and several elders rushed over with many deacons. "What are you doing? Spread out. So many people have broken into the Star Origin Palace and are all crowded together. What kind of scandal is this? You lawless bastards, do you still have the family rules and ancestral teachings in your eyes?" A few elders scolded sternly, ordering the deacons to disperse the 2,000 clansmen. Due to the majesty of the several elders, many Nangong clan members were filled with fear and hurriedly withdrew from the Star Origin Palace. But without permission, they could only gather in the square outside the Divine Palace and didn't dare to disperse. At this time, Nangong Nihuang stepped into the sky and looked at the crowd with a cold expression. She said in a solemn tone, "My fellow clansmen, I understand your eagerness to see Kenshin, but I am very disappointed by your recklessness and impulsiveness. Fortunately, Kenshin doesn't live in the Star Origin Palace and only we saw this farce. Think about it, if Kenshin really lived here, he would be in seclusion. He is currently recuperating in seclusion, yet you barged into the Divine Palace so rudely and recklessly. How rude is that? Is this how you treat our clan's distinguished guest and benefactor, your idol and role model? What do you want to show Kenshin? Show the impulsiveness and sloppiness of our clansmen? Or the ignorance and rudeness of our clansmen?" Nangong Nihuang's voice wasn't loud, and there was no anger on her face. She didn't curse. However, her words clearly entered everyone's ears, causing them to feel ashamed, regretful, and self-reproachful. Seeing the crowd's expression and reaction, Nangong Nihuang continued, "Today's matter ends here. I will plead for leniency on your behalf and ask the elders to exempt you from punishment. But I hope you will remember this lesson and think carefully before you do anything next time. If you can't even do such a small thing well, how can you make Kenshin believe that our Nangong clan can take on big responsibilities?" After she finished speaking, she waved her hand and signaled for the crowd to disperse. The more than 2,000 Nangong clan members turned and left as if they had been pardoned. In a short while, the square returned to peace and quiet. When the clansmen left the main peak and were on their way back to their residences, some of the smarter ones reacted and realized a problem. "Eldest mistress just said that we have to make Kenshin believe that our clan can take on big responsibilities. What does this mean? What kind of responsibilities? Could it be that Kenshin didn't come to Yenshu Cave to marry eldest mistress, but to carry out some mission? Take on big responsibilities. What kind of mission can be considered a big responsibility? Could it be that Kenshin wants to lead our clan to fight against the Azura God Emperor and seize control of the boundless heaven continent? It's very possible. Kenshin has a blood feud with the 5 God Emperors. If that's the case, then it's too shocking and exciting. Those meticulous and quick-witted Nangong clan members quickly guessed Nangong Nihuang's meaning. As the crowd conversed, the news quickly spread. In less than a day, the entire Yenshu cave knew about this. Suddenly, the Nangong clan fell into a state of excitement again. Everyone was discussing this matter. Of course, 60 to 70% of the Nangong clan members were looking forward to this event. But there were still 30 to 40% of the clansmen who were worried and anxious. In their opinion, even if Kenshin returned to his peak and recovered his strength, he would not be a match for the Azura God Emperor, let alone the 5 God Emperors. That would be seeking his own death. If the Nangong clan followed Kenshin and started this war, the Nangong clan would definitely be annihilated and destroyed. As a result, 2 completely different attitudes spread throughout Yenshu's cave. Even a few days later, many of the Nangong clan members were still arguing over this matter and there were many differences. Not only the ordinary clansmen, but even some of the deacons and a few elders were affected and had changed their minds. The elders, Nangong Nihuang, and the head of the Nangong clan all saw the changes in the wind and public opinion, but they did not express their opinions. This was because the head of the Nangong clan had instructed Nangong Nihuang to reveal the clues in public and let the clansmen guess Kenshin's plan. The head of the Nangong clan knew that sooner or later, the clansmen would know about this news. More than 10,000 clansmen had to reach a consensus before they could obey orders and unite to support Kenshin. And it was not that easy to unite as one. They needed a certain amount of time to digest and accept this news. Chapter 40-57. More than 10,000 Nangong clan members were still debating. However, the Nangong clan master and a few elders did not express their opinions. Even Nangong Nihuang did not express her opinion in public. Looking at everyone's posture, it was as if the clan members were allowed to discuss this matter. However, as time passed, the impact of this news on the Nangong clan members became weaker and weaker. After discussing the same topic too many times, everyone would eventually feel tired and indifferent. Those who firmly supported Kenshin and believed that the Nangong clan would follow Kenshin to overthrow the Azura God Emperor's rule no longer waved their flags and shouted their battle cries with passion. Those who were full of worries and worried about the fate of the Nangong clan and thought that Kenshin was digging his own grave also gradually lost interest in arguing. They were even too lazy to persuade other clan members to give up supporting Kenshin. Unknowingly, a month had passed. The impact of this matter had completely faded, and no one in Yenshu's grotto heaven was discussing it anymore, let alone arguing about it. After all, everyone's opinions were not that important. In the end, it was still up to the clan master to decide. At this time, some rumors began to spread among the Nangong clan members. According to some deacons, Nangong Nihuang's good sister secretly revealed that Nangong Nihuang was very confident in Kenshin. No matter what Kenshin did, she would fully support him. In less than 2 days, a few deacons spread the news again. They heard from 2 elders that a few elders had a high opinion of Kenshin and were full of anticipation. The Nangong clan was once all-powerful and stood at the peak of the vast heaven mainland. How nostalgic and proud it was. After the Azura God Emperor ruled the vast heaven mainland, the Nangong clan's status plummeted to its current state. They were full of resentment and hatred and had endured for thousands of years. Now, they finally had a chance to take revenge and destroy the Azura God Emperor's rule. Even if they had to risk their lives, they would fight with all their might. Originally, the topic of Kenshin's revenge had already died down. After these few rumors spread, it immediately stirred up the topic again, causing countless clan members to discuss it. This time, the voices opposing the Nangong clan's support for the Sword God had decreased by more than half, becoming sporadic. Unknowingly, many people of the Nangong clan were influenced by the words of Nangong Nihuang and the elders, affecting their mentality in decisions. The Nangong clan members who supported the Kenshin became even more determined. Those who were hesitant and wanted to sit on the fence also began to support the Kenshin. As for those clansmen who opposed the decision, they began to hesitate or obey the decision of the patriarch. In short, no matter what the patriarch decided on this matter, the Nangong clan would be very peaceful internally, and there would definitely not be any division or conflict. On the other hand, Nangong Ao and 8th Elder brought 100 elite Divine Lord experts and already started taking action in the Boundless Heaven continent. Back then, Nangong Ao had gone to the Patriarch and told him that he had been entrusted by Kenshin to go out on a mission. Of course, the Patriarch of the Nangong family nodded in agreement, but he felt that Nangong Ao was not reliable, so he had to send another elder to accompany him. Furthermore, Nangong Ao's mission was very important, and he could not afford to make any mistakes or oversights. Therefore, the Patriarch of the Nangong family not only sent 8th Elder, but also sent nearly 100 Divine Lords. He even handed over the intelligence network that the Nangong clan had laid dormant for many years to Nangong Ao. With the intelligence network that was good at gathering information, Nangong Ao and 8th Elder were even more relaxed and could achieve twice the result with half the effort. In just a month's time, they had already investigated 20 domains and gathered information on 20 domain lords. However, at this speed, it would be very difficult to gather information on nearly 100 domain lords in 3 months. In order to speed up the progress, Nangong Ao decisively chose to split up. He and 8th Elder each brought 50 elite Divine Lords and rushed to the north and south of the continent respectively to gather information. When the Patriarch of the Nangong family heard this news, he was naturally worried about the safety of the 2 elders. However, he also knew that time was tight, and if he did not do this, he would not be able to complete the mission given by Kenshin. Therefore, he could only acquiesce. In the next 2 months, some undercurrents gradually appeared in the Boundless Heaven continent. There were many clues and rumors that spread across the continent. It seemed like the news of Kenshin's return was inadvertently leaked out by someone. The various ancient clans and many forces of Grotto Heavens and Blessed Lands were no longer quietly lying dormant and showed some signs of restlessness. Several trusted generals under the Azura God Emperor's command, the few controllers who guarded the Boundless Heaven continent, seemed to have also received some confidential information. No idea what orders they issued, nearly 100 regions on the continent had powerhouses walking and mobilizing troops. Even though these things happened in secret and were carried out in a confidential state. But the Boundless Heaven continent that had been peaceful for many years, suddenly having these movements appear in a very concentrated manner still attracted the attention of people with intentions. The various major factions, sects, as well as many ancient clans, all became restless. Even the countless factions and divine king powerhouses all had their own thoughts. However, they had a premonition that a shocking storm was coming, and they might have the qualifications to get a share of the loot. Therefore, smart people would make arrangements and plans in advance to be in an active state. And not belatedly, when the situation changed, accepting certain results in a passive state. Ji Tianqing's 3-month deadline, the Nangong family head and several elders all knew about it. They were all waiting patiently and quietly carrying out some preparatory work in secret. But the Boundless Heaven continent was surging like a storm. The various factions could not hold back and started to take action in advance. Only 2.5 months had passed, and Yenshu Grotto Heaven welcomed a group of mysterious guests. The newcomers were 5 divine king powerhouses who hid their faces and concealed their tracks. They did not come together, but divided into 3 groups over 2 days to visit the Nangong family head one after another. When they arrived at the entrance of Yenshu Grotto Heaven, they did not reveal their true faces nor did they report their identities. They only took out a token each and let the guard commander pass it to the Nangong family head. When the Nangong family head saw those tokens, he guessed the identities of the 5 powerhouses. He could only let the guard commander pass and allow them to enter Yenshu Grotto Heaven. 2 days later, the 5 mysterious powerhouses gathered in the Great Light Hall and were received by the Nangong family head at the same time. There were only these 6 people in the hall. They were all upper divine kings and were the rulers of a region. Both parties did not talk nonsense and exchange conventional greetings. The atmosphere in the hall was also very solemn and oppressive. The few mysterious powerhouses' words were exceptionally short and surprisingly consistent. Nangong Buhua, we want to see him. The Nangong family head was not surprised by the few powerhouses' request. He even expected it. He shook his head expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "You came uninvited, I can't fulfill your request. The time is not ripe yet, please return first. Not long later, I will gather everyone on his behalf." One of the black-robed powerhouses with a hoarse voice snorted coldly and said, "Nangong Buhua, don't play dumb in front of me. Our coming today and coming the next time are 2 completely different matters." Chapter 40-58. Of the 6 experts in the hall, which one of them was not a sly old fox? Even if the black-robed elder did not say this, Master Nangong had already guessed their intentions. The 5 of them masked their faces and secretly met with Ji Tianqing. Most likely, they wanted to negotiate with Ji Tianqing to obtain more favorable conditions and benefits. It would be another matter if they followed Ji Tianqing's summons in the future. At least they would be in a passive position. Their status would be lower and they would have fewer bargaining chips. To put it simply, the forces represented by these 5 experts had the intention to support Ji Tianqing and help Ji Tianqing overthrow the Azura God Emperor's rule. However, their forces worked for Ji Tianqing and risked their lives. They must obtain sufficient benefits. Otherwise, who would be willing to risk being destroyed and follow him in his heaven-defying actions? Master Nangong could understand the feelings of these sly old foxes, but he could not make his own decision and negotiate with them on behalf of Ji Tianqing. There was no other way. Ji Tianqing was still recuperating in seclusion. He could not disturb him and he could not let the 5 sly old foxes know. If the 5 of them knew that Ji Tianqing was injured and was still recuperating in seclusion. When they negotiated, Ji Tianqing would be in a more passive position and it would be very disadvantageous. Therefore, the Nangong family head decided that he had to brush these 5 fellows off and send them away as soon as possible. "What do you want to do? Why did you sneak into Yenshu's cave?" "I don't know and I don't want to know. I just want to tell you that the time is not right. Don't try to be clever and make a fool of yourself. Moreover, Kenshin is the only hope for us and the boundless heaven continent. If you have any ill intentions, it's better to dispel them as soon as possible. We have known each other for so many years. I can only remind you once. Please take care of yourselves." After he finished, Master Nangong waved his hand, indicating that he wanted to send the guests off. However, the 5 mysterious experts sat there motionlessly. They had no intention of leaving. The black-robed elder sneered again, "Nangong Buhua. We're all shameless people, and we can't do something as despicable as you to sell your daughter for glory. However, reality has proven that you've won and gained Kenshin's trust. Otherwise, he would not have chosen Yenshu Grotto Heaven and let you represent him. But don't forget, your Nangong clan has already boarded the ship, and there is no turning back. But we are different. If we join forces and refuse to cooperate, it will become a one-man show between the Kenshin and the Nangong clan. One could imagine what would happen to the Nangong clan when the time came. Therefore, you'd better help us build a bridge and facilitate this cooperation. Not only is this beneficial to us, but it is also to protect the legacy of the Nangong clan." Patriarch Nangong frowned and instinctively wanted to refute the black-robed elder. However, he immediately calmed down. He knew that the other party was deliberately provoking him. Thus, he did not make any excuses and said expressionlessly, "Half a month later, I will follow the Kenshin's wishes and invite all of you to participate in this grand event. So, everyone, please go back and prepare. Forgive me for not entertaining you." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and shot out a golden light. Swoosh! The door of the great light hall opened, and sunlight shone in from outside. The 5 mysterious experts looked at each other, feeling angry and depressed. However, they could not do anything about Nangong Buhua's stubborn attitude. The 5 experts glared at Nangong Buhua and got up to leave. After a long while, the 5 mysterious experts left. At this moment, Nangong Nihuang and the other elders stepped into the great light hall. Nangong Nihuang's face was as cold as ice. She asked calmly, "Father, are the 5 clan leaders here to negotiate with the Kenshin?" Nangong Buhua nodded slightly and did not explain further. The elders revealed a playful smile, anger, and disdain as they started to discuss. These old foxes are well informed, but they are too impatient. Don't be fooled by their usual cold and arrogant appearance, as if they are living in seclusion and do not care about worldly affairs. In fact, who doesn't want to restore their former glory and have a high status and power? They think that by negotiating in advance, they can get more benefits. They are too naive. Kenshin is an expert, but he is not a schemer. I think they are just jealous that the Nangong clan is trusted and valued by the Kenshin. That is why they are so anxious to jump out. The middle-aged elders were all somewhat proud of themselves, and were quite critical of the 5 forces. Only a white-haired elder reported with a calm expression, "Patriarch, after 2 months of buffer, the opposition of the clansmen has weakened. Now, more than 80% of the clansmen have no objections. When the Kenshin comes out and announces the start of the operation, there should be no more objections." Nangong Buhua nodded and said calmly, "It's within my expectations. It's only right." The old man lowered his voice and asked, "Patriarch, those old foxes aren't wrong. The Kenshin chose Yenshu Cave as their base because they trust the Nangong clan. However, this also means that the Nangong clan is the Kenshin's staunchest ally. There is no way out. To be honest, no one can guarantee that the Kenshin will succeed. In fact, I think there is only a 10% chance. Have you really thought it through and made your choice?" Hearing this, Nangong Nihuang and the other elders stared at Nangong Buhua. There were no outsiders here. Everyone present was the person in charge of the Nangong clan. Their choice would determine the fate of the Nangong clan. Nangong Buhua smiled and said calmly, "I do not want to betray the Kenshin's trust, so I can only choose to accept it. When dealing with matters, the most taboo thing is to be indecisive. That is the path to death. Since I have chosen to board the Kenshin's ship, I have to go all the way. Even if the odds are low, I will take it as a gamble. I have to have the courage to take it." After a pause, he said solemnly, "Most importantly, the Kenshin has already created a miracle. Why can't we trust him?" Hearing this, Nangong Nihuang and the other elders heaved a sigh of relief. Their expressions and eyes became firm. Previously, they were worried that the clan leader would hesitate and not be able to make up his mind. Since the clan leader had already made his decision and was firm, they did not say anything more. They just had to follow the plan and do what they thought was right. "Clan leader, we understand. Rest assured, clan leader. We will do our best, even if we have to sacrifice our lives. The Nangong clan has been dormant for 1,000 years, conserving our strength, just for today's battle." The elders expressed their opinions one after another. Their voices revealed their excitement and tenacity. Nangong Buhua nodded with satisfaction and said, "Long Tian will be out in half a month. You cannot slack off on what I have instructed you to do. You must complete it quickly. Since the news has been leaked, we must be prepared at all times, just in case." Chapter 40-59. There was a saying that a prophecy came true. It was very suitable to be used on Nangong Buhua. He had just reminded the elders to strengthen their defenses and put Yenshu's grotto on alert. In less than 2 days, Yanshu's grotto welcomed another group of uninvited guests. Previously, the 5 mysterious experts would take out their tokens and let the guard commander at the entrance of the grotto report to them. This group of uninvited guests was more than 1,000 people. They rushed to the entrance of the grotto with a murderous aura. Swoosh! 3 Upper King grade divine warships lined up in the sky. Hundreds of cannons poked out and aimed at the formation at the entrance of the grotto. Swoosh! Swoosh swoosh! 50 Divine King powerhouses led 900 Divine Lord Realm experts as they flew out of the divine battleships. They lined up in the sky and surrounded the entrance of the grotto. They were all wearing armor and holding swords. Their bodies were surging with murderous aura. Although the number of guards at the entrance of Yanshu's grotto had doubled. Currently, there were 200 guards and 4 Divine King Realm guards leading them. However, they did not expect that before Kenshin's plan could even begin, there would be an army attacking Yanshu's grotto. Everyone was caught off guard. They were panicking and worried. Immediately, they pulled out their swords and sabers and gathered together. They stared at the surrounding people vigilantly. Even though the 4 guard commanders were afraid, they could not show their fear. They braced themselves and went forward to question the identity and purpose of the group. Who are you? Don't you know that this is Yanshu's grotto? This is the territory of the Nangong clan. Are you trying to start a war with the Nangong clan by pointing your weapons at us? If you don't want blood to flow like a river and the people to suffer, I advise you to leave immediately. Although the tone of the few guard commanders was strict, their aura was powerful. However, to the group, it sounded like they were trying to put up a strong front. After all, they were well aware of the origin of the other party. At this moment, among the 50 divine kings who stood at the front of the group, a few experts with powerful aura walked out. The leader was more than 10 feet tall. He wore a gold and silver chainmail, a phoenix-winged golden helmet and an ice-blue cloak. This person had a dignified appearance and an extremely powerful aura. Clearly, he was the leader of these 1,000 experts. A sword hung from his waist. His left hand was behind his back and his right hand was on the hilt of the sword. He looked at the several guard commanders with an expressionless face. I, Jin Shuang, have received orders to capture the criminal. No one is allowed to disobey, otherwise I will be punished for treason. Quickly report this to Nangong Buhua. Open up Yanshu's cave and welcome me inside. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Even though the Nangong clan's guards were able to guess the origin of those people, they were unable to do so. But when they heard the 2 words Jin Shuang, they couldn't help but tremble, and a trace of fear flashed in their eyes. It couldn't be helped. Jin Shuang was the vice commander of the patrol envoy. She had the authority and responsibility to patrol the entire boundless heaven continent. Since Vice Commander Jin Shuang had personally come, there was no need to mention the 7 high-level God Kings standing behind him, all wearing silver armor. Those 7 God Kings were definitely all patrolling envoys. After all, everyone knew that there were 49 patrolling envoys under the Shura God Emperor. Every team of 7 patrolled the world in rotation, maintaining order and peace. Other than that, the remaining 42 God Kings were mostly the leaders of the various regions and the leaders of the various forces. In short, those who came were all strong enemies that could not be underestimated. The 4 captains of the Nangong clan made a decision after exchanging glances with each other. One of them secretly sent out a message to report the situation to Nangong Buhua. The other 3 guard commanders acted dumb and pestered Jin Shuang to stall for time. So it is Vice Commander Jin Shuang who has graced us with your presence. Please forgive us for not going out to meet you. Vice Commander Jin Shuang, our Nangong clan had already closed Yanshu's cave more than 200 years ago and no longer cared about worldly affairs. You said that you want to capture the criminal, this has nothing to do with our Nangong clan, right? Vice Commander Jin Shuang, there must be some misunderstanding. Please calm down. Our clan leader will definitely explain to you clearly. Kenshin was a criminal and the Shura God Emperor wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. This was something that everyone knew. Therefore, the Nangong clan would never admit that they were harboring the criminal and shielding Kenshin. How could Jin Shuang believe the three guards' words? He scoffed at this and sneered contemptuously, "None of you are qualified to speak to this king. Shut up." Such arrogance and disdain made the four guard commanders feel ashamed and angry. They were so angry that they gritted their teeth. However, they could not do anything and could only suppress their anger and stare at Jin Shuang angrily. Jin Shuang ignored them and patiently waited for Nangong Buhua to appear. In fact, he had already found out that Kenshin was in Yenshu's cave. That was why he gathered so many elite soldiers and rushed to Yenshu's cave. He was also prepared. Whether Nangong Buhua appeared or not, and whether Kenshin was still in Yenshu's cave, he would force his way in. At that time, he would give the Nangong clan a painful lesson to warn the rest of the ancient clans. As for Kenshin, it would be best if he could capture him. Even if he could not, it would not matter. Anyway, he was only here to test the reaction of Kenshin and the Nangong clan. The main force to deal with Kenshin was still gathering and deploying in secret. Unknowingly, 15 minutes had passed. Nangong Buhua had not appeared and Jin Shuang was getting impatient. He frowned and his aura became gloomier. The few patrol envoys behind him started to fan the flames and make sarcastic remarks. "Deputy Commander, you have been waiting here for so long. How could Nangong Buhua not show up? He is not giving you any face. Humph. How dare he make our commander Jin Shuang wait here for so long? That Nangong Buhua is too arrogant. Nangong Buhua is avoiding us. He is obviously guilty. Since Nangong Buhua is harboring the criminal, he should be punished as an accomplice. Deputy Commander, I am afraid that Nangong Buhua is packing up his belongings and preparing to escape. We cannot wait any longer. We must rush into Yenshu's grotto heaven and capture the criminal and Nangong Buhua." The few patrol envoys were egging Jin Shuang on to lead the group into Yenshu's grotto heaven. When the 900 overseer gods heard this, their blood boiled and they were eager to give it a try. As for the Nangong clan's guards, they were filled with anger and complained in their hearts. If Jin Shuang really led the group into Yenshu's grotto heaven, they would be sacrificed first. However, the tone and expression of the patrol envoys were very sincere. It sounded like they were threatening them. However, with Jin Shuang's ruthless nature, it was very likely that he would do so. This caused the guards' hearts to be in a mess, and they felt extremely conflicted. They could not do anything. They could only hold their weapons tightly and prepare to fight to the death. Soon, another 15 minutes had passed. Jin Shuang's patience was finally exhausted. He waved his hand murderously and gave the order to attack. 7 inspectors, 42 godly kings, and 900 godly lord experts were all ready to launch an attack. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.